Chapter 671. The One Yuan Great Tao Technique, the Heaven-Devouring Divine Transformation Technique, and this new Golden Core Level Technique are all techniques that are most suitable for me. The fundamental function of this new technique is actually to accumulate extremely vigorous energy and strengthen my soul power. This will allow me to break through the shackles of the Golden Core, soar into the sky, survive the 9 heavenly lightning tribulations, and attain the primordial spirit. In that case, I shall name this new technique the Supreme Primordial Tao Technique. Using the Supreme Great Tao to forge an astonishing primordial spirit, this Supreme Primordial Tao Technique is nothing more than that. The moment Ziyue was pushed back by the invisible force, he still had the mind to name this new technique. As this thought flashed through his mind, the words Supreme Primordial Tao Technique appeared in the Cultivation Technique category on his attribute panel. Roar, roar, roar. As soon as he rushed out of the platform, the excited roars of star beasts could be heard. Immediately after, several gravity domains fell, and attacks turned into spiritual light that filled the sky and swept toward him. There were even star beasts with invincible physical bodies. When they stretched out their claws, the air was torn apart and emitted crisp sounds. The surrounding space was compressed and rippled. Although Ziyue was shocked, he did not panic. He had long known that when 8,050 breaths of time passed, he would encounter this tribulation. Therefore, as soon as he was pushed out, he raised his combat power to the maximum and then stretched out his hand. A streak of spiritual light swept out like a waterfall. Boom, boom, boom. Tao Technique, Primordial Magnetic Divine Light. The terrifying divine light vibrated and crushed the astral power attacks one after another. The astral power attacks collapsed and dissipated. The remaining force was like a giant whip that lashed out fiercely. The giant claws of a 5th-grade star beast that could split mountains trembled and retracted as if they had been hit by a heavy blow. Under the terrifying force, the soles of its feet and forelimbs became weak and powerless. It took a while for it to recover. The power of the primordial magnetic divine light did not disappoint me. Unfortunately, even though this power could block the combined attack of the 5-level, 5-star beasts, it would still be difficult for him to escape unscathed. Not to mention killing those star beasts. Ziyue raised his eyes slightly. He already had a plan in mind. He knew that the 5-class 5-star beasts were even more threatening than Forefather Bitterchick and Rising Cloud Forefather. With his current strength, it was naturally difficult for him to deal with it. Without any hesitation, he glanced at his attribute panel. If it was before, he would naturally be helpless and could only retreat and flee with all his might. However, at this moment, he had the chance to turn the tables and even kill all of these star beasts. Spending 500 million soul energy can raise the Supreme Primordial Tao Technique from the early stage to the middle stage. As expected, the higher the rank of the cultivation method, the more terrifying the amount of soul energy needed to upgrade it. And this is only from the early to the middle stage. Once I reach the late stage, and from the late stage to the peak stage, the amount of soul energy I need to expend will be a huge burden to me. However, this is an upgrade in the golden elixir realm, after all. Compared to ordinary cultivators, it is already countless times faster. Although the amount of soul energy required is huge, it is not unbearable. Ziyue's eyes were filled with surprise, which then turned into a strong sense of determination. Furthermore, this was only because this cultivation technique was created by him. Otherwise, if it were someone else's cultivation method, he would have to go through a period of hard work to reach the entry level before he could use the power of the attribute panel to upgrade it. Upgrade. Ziyue chose to upgrade it without hesitation. Boom. In an instant, a terrifying amount of spiritual qi seemed to be drawn from the 9 heavens. Under the effect of a special force, all of it poured into Ziyue's body. Ziu's incomparably pure purple elixir essence boiled and rolled like the Milky Way from the 9 heavens. It suddenly started to circulate along the supreme primordial Tao technique. Its speed was unimaginably fast. Chi, heaven and earth roared. Ziu's thoughts seemed to stop for a moment at this moment. Countless cultivation methods, operating principles, and various cultivation experiences regarding the supreme primordial Tao technique suddenly rushed into his mind. As for him, it was as if he had really gone through thousands of years of bitter cultivation in an instant. He directly raised this cultivation technique from the initial stage to the middle stage. As a result, his immortal cultivation realm finally rose from the initial stage to the middle stage of the golden elixir realm. Although he had just stepped into the middle stage of the golden elixir realm, his strength, the strength of his soul, the strength of his physical body, and the purity of his pure purple elixir essence, all of these aspects were greatly improved. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Powerful and vast. Inexplicably, Ziu felt as if he could cover the sky with one hand, tear everything apart, and destroy the heavens and earth. However, Ziu knew that all of this was just an illusion caused by the sudden increase in his strength. He knew very well that even if his strength had increased tremendously due to the cultivation method, he definitely did not have the supreme strength to cover the sky with one hand and tear the heavens and earth apart. However, my strength has increased tremendously. There is no doubt about it. Not to mention the strength of my soul, just the pure purple elixir essence in my body has been completely converted into the supreme primordial Tao technique. In terms of toughness, purity, and strength, it is no weaker than the primordial spirit of a primordial spirit expert. At the very least, the primordial spirit essence that only primordial spirit cultivators can condense is no longer of any use to me now. Ziu's eyelids trembled. He felt a sense of peace and satisfaction. He was also constantly feeling the changes in his strength. He was intoxicated by the feeling that the heavens and earth were no longer the same. As the terrifying aura rose, his aura rapidly increased. It was vast and majestic, shocking everyone. At this moment, the 5 Class 5-star beasts that were about to continue attacking Ziu suddenly stopped in their tracks. They looked at Ziu in shock and bewilderment, not knowing what to do. Instinctively, they all felt a huge threat. In particular, Ziu's previous strike that destroyed their combined attack was terrifying. Coupled with his current aura, they instinctively felt a sense of fear. The change in Ziu's aura was too great and too strong. It really shocked them. After using the time reversal earlier and this time's increase, my spiritual energy is finally running low. Now I only have 30 million points left. Ziu glanced at the attributes panel and took a deep breath. Chapter 672. This time, he had used up too much of his spiritual energy. He had more than 800 million points of spiritual energy. Because of the time reversal, he had used 270 million points of spiritual energy. And this time, his spiritual energy had decreased by 500 million points of spiritual energy. Compared to that, the cost of recovering his Jindan essence and comprehending the Tao was negligible. However, compared to my gains this time, it was worth it. It was all worth it. At that time, it was the most perfect cultivation method in the golden elixir realm. He had reached the middle stage of the golden elixir realm with a perfect violet golden elixir that contained 12 golden elixir shackles. Ziu's heart was surging. Then, he suddenly turned around and looked at the 5 level 5 star beasts not far away. After his strength had increased, his confidence had risen to an unimaginable level. Originally, he had to avoid powerful enemies to barely survive, but now, they were no longer a problem for him. Coincidentally, his spiritual energy had been exhausted. He needed a huge amount of spiritual energy to replenish and increase his strength so that he could increase his strength faster. 5 level 5 star beasts. Together, they are equivalent to at least 100 million spiritual energy. Ziyue's eyes were slightly red. Roar, roar, roar. In this astral origin palace, level 5 star beasts had always been comparable to kings. Even though the aura rising from Ziyue's body frightened them, the majesty of a king was also inviolable. They were instantly enraged. Then, they turned into streaks of flowing light and quickly rushed toward Ziyue. Some of the star beasts that had mastered the power of domains quickly spread their domain power and bombarded by Ziyue's body. Without exception, they had mastered the gravity domain. Boom, boom, boom. 3 domains bombarded him in succession. Immediately, the gravity acting on Ziyue increased from 320 times to about 500 times. Gravity domain? What a coincidence! I can take out your star cores and use them as my reference to perfect my gravity shadow domain. Ziyue grinned hideously. The gravity shadow domain was activated. As his body became lighter, he also used the God Spirit Dharma body and the heaven patching technique. His combat strength immediately soared to the extreme. Boom! A star beast lashed out with its tail as fast as lightning, tearing the void apart with a rumble. Ziyue's body flashed with lightning and his speed was unbelievably fast as he dodged the other party's attack. However, at the moment when Ziyue's figure retreated, a black thread silently shot out. Great divine ability, primordial spirit, great cleave. The star beast turned pale with fright. However, the speed of the black thread was too fast. Even if it reacted at the first moment, the defensive power of its body had already reached the 5th level and was incomparably tough, comparable to a top-grade golden core treasure, and there was even a protective starlight circulating around its body. But under the power of the great magnetic slash, everything was cut apart. Puff! It was quickly cut into 2 halves. As the terrifying destructive power spread out, it immediately scattered the soul within the star core. As Ziyue cultivated the Tao technique, the great magnetic divine light, and cultivated it to perfection, when he used the great magnetic slash, he could not help but carry a trace of the great magnetic slash's characteristic. Not only did it make the attack more powerful, but its destructive power was also much more terrifying. As my cultivation level has increased, the power of my various attacks has indeed increased by a lot. If my previous great magnetic slash was at most half a step into the primordial soul realm, then this time, it is definitely above half a step into the primordial soul realm and has truly stepped into the primordial soul realm. Although a 5th level star beast is strong, it is still slightly inferior to a true primordial soul realm cultivator. Naturally, it will not be able to withstand the attack of my great divine ability. Ziyue was calm and was not at all surprised by the effect of this attack. His figure flashed and he was already in front of another 5th level star beast. He stretched out his hand. Boom! Immediately, a huge space appeared in his sleeve and in an instant, it pulled the star beast into it. At this moment, his sleeve closed up. Great divine ability, heaven and earth in the sleeve. Then, he no longer paid any attention to the star beast. His flying sword pierced through the air and manifested the one sword to break all spells. Puff! A ferocious-looking star beast with a huge horn on its head charged towards him. Before it could get close, its head was pierced through by the flying sword. Boom! Then, it fell heavily to the ground and did not get up again. At the same time, a star beast with its mouth wide open and a terrifying amount of star power was brewing in its mouth. It was about to spit out an attack towards Ziyue. However, Ziyue also reached out his hand in an instant like a phantom. In an instant, a ball of spiritual light was rapidly shot out by him. Great divine ability, grand forbidden spirit art. Puff! In an instant, the star power that had just been brewing in its mouth dissipated in an instant. Moreover, the sealing method of the Great Spirit sealing technique seemed to be unimaginably powerful. Not only did it seal up the star beast's star energy, but even its flesh and blood seemed to be affected by a special power at that moment. It was unable to move at all. In the wailing, the star beast's eyes were filled with obvious fear. It was scared. The feeling that it couldn't control any of its astral power, flesh, or blood power made it extremely panicked. The last star beast was the strongest, but it was also the smartest. When it noticed that out of the 4 star beasts of the same level as it, 2 were dead and 2 were trapped in a short period of time, it was immediately terrified. Without thinking, it quickly fled out of the hall. Too powerful. The means and the strength Zeus showed at this moment were really too powerful. It was beyond its imagination. It was even more horrifying. Escape? Do you think you can escape? Zeus sneered. He triggered his mind. In an instant, dazzling sword light flashed between heaven and earth. The sword light was extremely dazzling. When it soared into the sky, it seemed to be the only one in the world, shocking everyone. However, the sword lights began to descend at an even faster speed than before. Boom, 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 they directly pierced through the void. In an instant, they formed a huge sword-shaped cage that was completely wrapped by the sword light. And in the middle of the sword-shaped cage was the star beast that was about to escape. Great divine ability, 5 Emperor Heaven Sealing Sword. In an instant, the Class 5 star beast began to frantically resist and bombard it. But just like the star beast that was kept in the heaven and earth sleeve, no matter how they attacked, the 2 restraining great divine abilities were as stable as city walls and could not be shaken at all. With my current strength, it is really too easy to deal with these star beasts of the 5th level. When I go all out, the power of any of my great divine abilities has already reached the level of the primordial soul realm. The restraining power of the heaven and earth sleeve and the 5 Emperor Heaven Sealing Sword can even make it difficult for a true primordial soul realm cultivator to break free, not to mention these star beasts of the 5th level who are not even as strong as a primordial soul realm cultivator. Zeus casually used all sorts of methods, which made him feel very comfortable. Then, without any hesitation, he stretched out his hand and the flying sword rushed out again. Poof! The head of the star beast that had just broken free from the great forbidden spirit technique was completely penetrated. The beast's soul in the star core was quickly annihilated by the sword chi of the flying sword. Then, the flying sword flashed and fell into the heaven and earth sleeve and the 5 Emperor Heaven Sealing Sword. In a short time, the remaining 2 star beasts were directly killed. Whoosh, whoosh, the mighty wind blew and the world became clear. 5 star beasts of the 5th level were all killed by Zeus at this moment. This confirmed the Taoist name that he had casually mentioned earlier, the 5 Kill True Lord. These 5 star beasts of the 5th level were not weak. When they joined forces, they were even more threatening than the 2 primordial soul realm cultivators that I met earlier. Unfortunately, the one they encountered was me, who had broken through to the middle stage of the golden core stage. Zeus looked at the 5 corpses on the ground and gasped in admiration. Then, his gaze landed on the attribute panel. He smiled and said, "Yes, the amount of spiritual energy given to me is also quite large. Originally, I was only left with 30 million spiritual energy. Now, it has soared to more than 100 million and reached the level of 150 million spiritual energy. This has greatly alleviated the tension in my spiritual energy." Zeus was very satisfied with the results of this battle. He started to collect the spoils of war quickly. Soon, there were 5 star cores of the 5th level in Zeus' hands. Their corpses were thrown into the northern underworld grotto heaven's treasury. He planned to deal with them himself after he got out. Every one of these 5 star cores is indeed a manifestation of Tao laws. Moreover, perhaps because they have used the Book of the Great Tao and comprehended the Great Tao of heaven and earth, the changes of Tao laws on their star cores are obviously more than the one I obtained outside. Most of them are Tao law runes related to gravity. They can definitely help me perfect my gravity shadow domain. Ziyue's face revealed a trace of satisfaction. Then, his gaze fell on the platform in the distance. On the platform, the Book of the Great Tao was floating in the void. Vaguely, there seemed to be flowing light flashing by. It was so dazzling and eye-catching. The Book of the Great Tao. One has to step onto the gravity steps and reach the top to be able to take it out. The Star Origin Sacred Mountain has fallen here for tens of thousands of years. Countless cultivators have stepped into this place, and there is no lack of outstanding cultivators with unparalleled strength. There are even some who are comparable to the half-step Primordial Soul Realm, or even the Primordial Soul Realm. However, no one has been able to take it away. When I tried before, I only reached 805. You can imagine how difficult it is. Ziyue muttered. He wanted to try again and see if he could reach the top with his current strength. However, he only had one chance. He had already lost the chance to continue climbing the gravity step. So Ziyue's eyes flashed. Chapter 673. Therefore, I can only use brute force to break through its outer defensive light screen and shatter it. Only then can I truly obtain the Book of the Great Tao. No one would not be tempted when faced with the Book of the Great Tao. Even the sect masters and primordial soul realm powerhouses were the same. Ziyue was naturally the same. Although he had now lost the opportunity to ascend the 1,000 gravity steps again, he had the possibility of using brute force to break through the entire defensive light screen. The defensive power of this defensive light screen is extremely strong. It seems to be connected to the entire stellar source palace. As long as it is not shattered in one go, it can instantly recover to its original state with the help of the beginner grade 5-star vein beneath the stellar source palace. Previously, the 5 grade 5-star beasts joined forces but failed to shatter it with their continuous attack. This shows how strong it is. Judging from this, its defensive power is definitely above the mid-stage primordial soul realm. Ziyue looked at the Book of the Great Tao and took a deep breath. He inexplicably felt a little nervous. If it was me in the past, even if I used my Tao skill, the primordial magnetic divine light, which is comparable to the full-force attack of a third-tier mid-stage primordial soul realm cultivator, it would probably be difficult to shatter it. But now it's not impossible, Ziyue muttered in his heart. As he fully unleashed his combat power, the purple polar elixir essence in his body circulated wildly. Traces of inexplicable aura brewed around him. Heaven and earth froze, and everything fell silent. Hum, hum, hum. Before the light of the divine essence-fused light could fully manifest, ripples suddenly appeared in the void. It was as if the void had become wrinkled, and it became chaotic. Whoosh! Suddenly, a stream of water, like a waterfall or a gathering of stars in the sky, fell into Ziyue's hand. He waved his hand. Rumble! The void roared. Space collapsed, like a stream of light flashing past. Fast. It was extremely fast. Even with Ziyue's eyesight, he could barely detect its trajectory before it crashed directly into the defensive light screen. Crack! The mirror-like defensive light screen was directly shattered. The remaining power turned into a stream of light that directly bombarded the main hall behind him. Sha sha sha, like a sandstorm, the entire hall instantly collapsed and turned into ashes. It shattered. Ziyue's eyes widened as he revealed an extremely excited expression. Without any hesitation, he rushed out. Soon, a treasure that looked like a book and a round mirror appeared in his hand. You obtained the Book of the Great Tao? Even though he had already guessed this in his heart, his strength was no longer the same as before. As his cultivation level soared, the power of his primordial magnetic divine light also soared. However, when his attack truly shattered the defensive light screen and he obtained the Book of the Great Tao, he was still extremely excited. Although its appearance is somewhat similar to the Zhou Tianyan magic mirror, there are actually many differences in the specific details. Disregarding everything else, Just the material of this book of the Great Tao is countless times better than the heavenly mirror. Ziyue sized up the book of the Great Tao. He couldn't help but use his consciousness to scan it. He was looking forward to using the book of the Great Tao to create a new technique. Then, his expression changed and he said in a daze, "What's going on? It's not working?" When his consciousness swept over, the book of the Great Tao didn't move at all. It was no longer like before, when it could evolve thousands of great Taos and manifest countless mysterious scenes. Then, Ziyue seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly injected his Jindan essence into it. Buzz! Suddenly, the book of the Great Tao trembled slightly. It was only then that Ziyue's perception truly revealed the feeling of thousands of great Taos being available for viewing. However, isn't the energy required to activate the book of the Great Tao a little too terrifying? It's only been a few breaths, and my Jindan essence is already so dense that it can't sustain it? But soon, Ziyue's expression changed slightly and he stopped. Thinking about it, it's normal. The book of the Great Tao could be activated previously because of the continuous supply of energy from the beginner grade 5-star vein under my feet. Now that I've broken the formation, the connection between the star vein and the book of the Great Tao has naturally been lost. I can only activate it with my own strength. Ziyue's face lit up with realization, but he couldn't help calculating in his heart. If I use the same formation to link it, the spirit vein, or even spirit stones to activate it, I should be able to make the book of the Great Tao play a huge role. He thought of the spirit vein in his northern underworld grotto heaven that had been promoted to beginner grade 4. Although it was far inferior to this beginner grade 5-star vein, it shouldn't be difficult to sustain the book of the Great Tao's consumption in a short time. Of course, if he wanted to activate it for a long time, such as using the book of the Great Tao to create a technique, the consumption would be enormous. He would have to add spirit stones to maintain it. He estimated that 10,000 superior grade spirit stones would only be able to sustain it for a breath at most. If it wasn't necessary, he wouldn't want to try such a consumption. After studying the book of the Great Tao for a while, Ziyue finally put it away. Then, he dashed in the direction of the other palaces. After dozens of minutes, Ziyue walked out of the palaces with a regretful look on his face. After tens of thousands of years, countless cultivators had come one after another, and the valuable things inside had long been taken away by others. Naturally, he had gained nothing. Then, he didn't stop. He directly rushed to the top of the mountain and the various star beasts. Previously, when he had come up the mountain, he had wholeheartedly wanted the book of the Great Tao. In addition, his own strength was still insufficient, so he didn't dare to be too arrogant. However, now, not only did he have the book of the Great Tao, but his strength was also not what it used to be. He had even created a golden elixir technique, which required a huge amount of spirit energy to improve his celestial technique realm. Therefore, Ziyue instantly became envious of the many level 4 star beasts on this huge spirit vein. This was equivalent to a huge amount of spirit energy. In addition, each star beast's flesh and blood essence, material essence, bones, and even the star core were all very valuable. Naturally, he was unwilling to give them up. Roar! 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 Beast roars shook the earth. Attacks shook the heavens. The battle had entered its most intense state from the very beginning. However, since the beginning, Ziyue had already killed the 5 strongest level 5 star beasts in the entire Star Source Palace. Although the remaining star beasts had different strengths, there were many who were proficient in special techniques, and there were even groups of star beasts that were not weaker than level 5 star beasts. However, in the face of Ziyue's ferocious attacks, all of them were easily killed and annihilated. On this day, the starry sky was dyed red with blood. Countless star beasts died, and wails filled the air. Chapter 674. 2 hours later, Ziyue's figure appeared at the foot of the mountain. This time, Ziyue was in a frenzied killing spree. Although there might be some that he missed, at least 90% of the star beasts in the mountain had been slaughtered by him. Even this star vein, if not for the fact that it was connected to the entire star source mountain and made him vaguely feel a special and powerful force brewing within, would definitely have been dug out by him. What a pity! Ziyue sighed, but his eyes could not help but look at his own attribute panel. Soon, a smile appeared on his face. The number of spiritual energy has soared again, from 150 million to 530 million. It has increased by a total of 380 million points. The huge and rapid gains are even more ferocious than during the demon-slaying battle back then. He lamented, but in his heart, he felt that it was normal. During the demon-slaying battle back then, although many cultivators had perished, most of their immortal spell realms were not high. Naturally, the amount of spiritual energy given to him was much less. This time, although the number of star beasts he had killed was far less than before, each star beast was at least at the 4th level, which was comparable to the late Golden Elixir realm. Of course, the amount of spiritual energy given to him was much greater than before. More than 500 million spiritual energy is not enough for my immortal spell realm to advance to the late Golden Elixir realm. However, it can also make my extreme purple elixir essence energy thicker than before. Ziyue knew that although his immortal spell realm had advanced to the middle Golden Elixir realm, he had just advanced. However, the truth was that he had just broken through to the next level. Not only was his pure purple elixir essence not considered rich, but the degree of condensation was also different from that of a true immortal soul cultivator. Although it was not big, it was still at the same level. But he was very clear that since the 2 primordial soul realm cultivators had predicted that he would rush out from this exit, they would definitely set up an inescapable trap. Now, even if he was at least 70% confident that he could kill the 2 of them, he still had to take precautions. So, spending 10 million spiritual energy can increase the cultivation progress of the middle stage of the Supreme Primordial Tao technique from 0% to 1%. Indeed, the cultivation of the technique can also be improved in stages. From the middle stage to the late stage, it would require 1 billion soul points to officially advance. If I break it down, I can use 10 million soul energy to increase my cultivation speed by 1%. Ziyue was not surprised by this. Although most of the time, he would upgrade at once. However, this method of slowly increasing one's cultivation speed was something he was extremely proficient in when his soul energy was insufficient in the early days. At this moment, knowing that someone would make a move against him, he naturally wouldn't be stingy in making more preparations in order to be absolutely safe. Upgrade. In the blink of an eye, his cultivation progress of the Supreme Primordial Tao had reached 1% of the middle stage. His pure purple elixir essence power, the strength of his soul, and the strength of his physical body also seemed to be improving along with the progress of this cultivation method. Although it was not obvious, with his control over his own power, he could naturally sense it. Continue. It was only 1% of the progress. Of course, he was not satisfied. By spending 100 million soul energy points, I can raise the middle stage of the Supreme Origin Tao technique from 1% to 11%. Upgrade. 100 million soul points. As such, Ziyue chose to upgrade one after another. He directly raised his cultivation speed to 30% of the middle stage. The strength of his physical body, the purity of his pure purple elixir essence power, and the strength of his soul also increased greatly. His strength also soared. I only have 230 million soul energy points left. Although I still want to continue upgrading, in order to be absolutely safe, I naturally have to save it for emergencies. From Ziyue's point of view, strength was very important. However, he also knew that once he encountered a powerful enemy that he could not resist, It was even more important to leave some soul energy as a trump card and use the power of time reversal to avoid. Because this could save his life. Previously, if he did not have the soul energy to use time reversal, not to mention escape, it would be a problem whether he could survive. Following that, his figure leaped slightly and directly rushed out of the space entrance. The surrounding wind and waves are starting to reduce, and the strange wind and thunder are also slowly slowing down. The riot of the stellar origin divine mountain should be ending soon, right? It's about time. At most, it will be 2 hours. This time, the riot of the stellar origin divine mountain will end. When that time comes, Taoist Dark North will definitely be pushed out of the stellar origin palace by the special power of the divine mountain. Once he is pushed out, he will definitely fall into the inescapable trap that we have set up. He is dead meat. Near the entrance of the stellar origin palace, 2 cultivators faced each other from afar. Their auras were not obvious, but they both had a special aura of Tao. They were the 2 great primordial soul realm ancestors, Patriarch Bitter Ginger from the True Devil sect and Patriarch Rising Cloud from the 9-star Tao Palace. In order to hunt down Ziyue, the 2 of them could be said to have painstakingly planned and even joined forces. Fellow Taoist, you are indeed a true cultivator of the 9-star Tao Palace. You were actually able to set up this stellar immortal trap formation around the violent Yuan Qi fluctuations at the entrance of the passage. With this formation here, not to mention that Taoist Dark North is only a golden core realm cultivator, even an early primordial soul realm cultivator like you and me would find it extremely difficult to break free. Old Ancestor Ku Sanj said respectfully. The environment here is not suitable for setting up a formation. Although this stellar immortal trap formation has been completed, it can only display 60% of its power at most. It is not difficult to trap an early primordial soul realm cultivator for a period of time, but it is not so easy to capture him. In addition, this Taoist Dark North does have some tricks up his sleeve. Fellow Taoist, you should understand this after exchanging blows with him. Especially that divine light attack of his. Even now, I still feel some lingering fear when I think of its power. It is definitely not weaker than the all-out attack of a cultivator who has just advanced to the mid-primordial soul realm. This formation of mine can at most withstand 3 attacks of that level. Patriarch Rising Cloud spoke humbly, but there was an obvious smile on his face. Although he was praising Ziyue, he was actually very pleased with himself. Although Ziyue's methods were strong, he would need 3 attacks to break through his great formation and escape. However, by the time Ziyue destroyed his formation, he and Patriarch Bitter Chalice would have been able to kill Ziyue countless times over. As expected, Patriarch Bitter Ginger quickly smiled and said, with Taoist Dark North's methods, he would need 3 attacks of that divine light to break through this great formation. However, the time required for 3 attacks is definitely not short. Do you think we can let him attack as he pleases? He would have long been blasted to smithereens. There is no way he will be able to escape this time. I will not allow the same thing to happen again. Chapter 675. The 2 of them silently discussed. Their gazes silently fell in the direction of the entrance and exit. Their faces were relaxed. Indeed, they felt relaxed. Previously, although Ziyue's strength had exceeded their expectations, the 2 of them still took him seriously, barely treating him as an existence on the same level as them. However, they knew in their hearts that their strength was definitely above his, and their combined strength was far superior to his. Now that they had made many preparations and set up a formation to assist them, they naturally felt that their plan was foolproof. It should be soon. This time, take it as my way of repaying you for saving my life earlier. Dozens of miles away, a beautiful and peerless cultivator was also looking at the entrance of the Star Source Palace from afar. Her aura seemed to be a little unstable and not very stable. Her pale face had a trace of abnormal red, as if she had just experienced a great calamity. However, her eyes were filled with unswerving determination. She did her best to suppress her aura as she gazed at the scene in the distance. So fast? He came out early? Suddenly, she was startled and revealed a trace of surprise. Then, she lifted her finger slightly and placed it on a formation, activating the means she had set up earlier without hesitation. Boom! Instantly, a magic treasure that looked like a javelin turned into a bolt of lightning and shot out fiercely. He came out so quickly? On the other side, Ancestor Bitter Lettuce and Ancestor Ascending Cloud were also startled. However, they quickly took action. They quickly activated the stellar immortal trapping formation they had set up earlier. Rumble! Under the effect of the raging spiritual chi of heaven and earth, the formation's power could hardly be exerted. However, not only was the stellar immortal trapping formation a high-level formation, but it was also a rare treasure, the stabilizing origin bead. No matter how raging the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was, it would be affected and stabilized. Therefore, the stellar immortal trapping formation could be put to use at this time. As expected, he's guarding outside. Furthermore, he even managed to set up a formation. As soon as Ziyue rushed out of the entrance, he suddenly felt a flash in front of his eyes. In the void, it was as if a black cloth had suddenly appeared, covering the entire world and all the clouds and mist. However, within the black cloth, there were 1, 2, 3 seemingly endless stars that suddenly fell down and sealed him within. He knew very well how difficult it was to set up a formation in a place where the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was rampant. It was obvious that the two primordial spirit realm cultivators had put in a lot of effort to set it up successfully. However, he wasn't surprised by this. He raised his eyes slightly. He had been prepared for this for a long time. With a thought, he stretched out his palm. Suddenly, ripples appeared in the void. The space seemed to have wrinkled and became chaotic. Then, with a piercing sound, a divine light that resembled a waterfall suddenly appeared. Tao Technique, Primordial Magnetic Divine Light. Who's there? How dare you? Just as Bai Ziyue was about to hurl out the divine essence-fused light, a voice suddenly rang out. All of a sudden, two cries of surprise were heard. Then, boom boom boom. In an instant, a violent and ferocious attack rapidly landed on the formation above Ziyue's head. Chi chi chi, in the blink of an eye, the light of the stars outside the formation dimmed to the extreme. However, the Celestial Entrapment Formation was one of the rare intermediate Grade 5 Grand Formations. Even though its power was greatly reduced due to the environment, it still required the combined attack of 3 intermediate Primordial Soul Stage cultivators in order to break the formation and rescue Bai Ziyue. Therefore, although the Dream Immortal King's attack was powerful and was not weaker than the full-force attack of a middle primordial spirit realm cultivator, it was still difficult to break the formation. What's going on? Who's helping me? Bai Ziyue was stunned and a little dumbfounded. He had always been a loner and had never had a helper in a life-and-death battle. Although there were 1 or 2 old acquaintances on Xingyuan's Sacred Mountain, both Wang Yujian and perfected Lord Ling Coffin were only at the early or middle stage of the Golden Elixir realm. In a battle against a primordial spirit realm expert, they were completely useless. Moreover, Ziyue could clearly feel that the power of the attack on the formation was not weak. In fact, it was not weaker than the primordial magnetic divine light that he had used before his breakthrough. Who could it be? Ziyue was puzzled, but he did not hesitate to throw out the primordial magnetic divine light. Boom boom boom. The void roared and the space collapsed. The attack seemed to have blasted from one side of the space to the other and finally landed on the formation. Puff! There was a loud sound. The formation was broken. Heaven and earth became clear and the scene of the outside world appeared in front of Ziyue's eyes. Naturally, he saw the shocked and furious Forefather Emerald and the rising cloud Forefather. Then, he saw a peerlessly beautiful female cultivator in the distance. She was charging toward the battlefield like a bolt of lightning. It was obvious that the one who had attacked the formation and wanted to help him was this female cultivator. Her identity surprised Ziyue. She was Dream Immortal King Li Mengxian, someone who had a personal grudge against him and whom he had fought before. How is this possible? The stellar immortal trap formation is broken so quickly. Both the Rising Cloud Ancestor and the Bitter Chalice Ancestor were aghast. This attack had surprised them again and again. Dream Immortal King had appeared out of nowhere and sabotaged their plan. Soon after, Bai Ziyue also began to retaliate. They were not surprised by this. However, what shocked them was the strength of the other party's attack was more than twice as strong as what they had expected. Not only was the attack swift, but its power was also unimaginably strong. Just by landing on top of the formation was immediately shattered. Although the Dream Immortal King had attacked first and destroyed the formation, as Primordial Soul Realm experts, they had sharp eyes. Naturally, they knew that even without the Dream Immortal King's attack, Bai Ziyue's attack could easily destroy the formation. That attack had long surpassed the formation's tolerance limit. He seems to have broken through? He's broken through from early Golden Core Realm to mid-Golden Core Realm? It's only a minor realm increase. How did his strength increase so much? Is this attack really something a Golden Core cultivator can unleash? I don't know. But according to what I know, it's not like there aren't any Golden Core cultivators that possess offensive techniques that are comparable to Primordial Soul cultivators. But there's absolutely no one that can reach such a shocking level like Taoist North Ming. Chapter 676. The power of this strike has already far surpassed yours and mine. It's almost at the level of the late Primordial Spirit Realm. Advanced Primordial Spirit Realm? That's right. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but the Dream Immortal King's immortal technique seems to have broken through as well. Although I didn't sense any pure yang qi from her body, which proves that her soul hasn't gone through the baptism of the lightning tribulation and advanced to the level of primordial spirit. But if my guess is correct, she must have broken free from all the shackles of the gold core. From then on, he was free and unfettered, and was only a step away from the primordial spirit realm. In other words, the current her can trigger the lightning tribulation at any time and possibly break through to the primordial spirit realm. Their thoughts flashed wildly, and for the first time, they felt a trace of panic in their hearts. One of them was only at the middle golden core realm, but he possessed an offensive strength that was comparable to a middle or advanced primordial spirit realm cultivator. On the other hand, the other had broken free from all the shackles of the Aurus core and obtained great freedom. He had the possibility of breaking through to the immortal soul realm at any time. With the two of them joining forces, the threat to them was too great. His initial pride and confidence were shattered into pieces at this moment. Hurry up and leave. I can only hold them off for 5 breaths of time. Dream Immortal King didn't know about the thoughts flashing through the minds of Forefather Serpentine and Rising Cloud Forefather. She also didn't know that Ziyue's current strength was no longer the same as before. The moment he rushed over, he sent a soul message, and he immediately attacked. With a thought, the rainbow-glazed lamp quickly appeared above her head. As the glazed lamp fell and enveloped her, a 7-colored spiritual light flashed and quickly rushed towards the 2 primordial soul cultivators. This was the second ability that had been unlocked from the 7-colored glazed lamp after her strength had increased. 7-colored soul stabilizing light. Leave? There's no need. Ziyue raised his eyebrows in surprise and said indifferently. Without the slightest hesitation, he stretched out his hand, and the Dark North flying sword flew out, unleashing the one sword to break all laws. In the next moment, the flying sword closed in on Patriarch Bitterchick, who was even closer to him. So fast, so strong, Patriarch Bitter Lettuce sensed how terrifying the sword was. Not only was it fast, but it also contained a piercingly cold sword energy that seemed capable of tearing the world apart and piercing through all things. Even though the sword chi had not truly landed on his body, it had already caused him to be extremely shocked, and he even had a feeling that he could not block it. Unstoppable! How could an early-stage essence soul realm fiendish cultivator be unable to withstand a single strike from a mid-stage golden core realm cultivator? Patriarch Bitter Lettuce suppressed the shock in his heart and waved his hand. The bone saber turned into a streak of light and shot forward. At the same time, he summoned his natal magic weapon, the Black Scorch Saber. The Black Scorch Saber also evolved a Dao technique, the Myriad Blood Mortal World. Waves of bloody light swept out like a river. Chi. Although Ziyue's natal magic weapon, the Dark North Flying Sword, was not of a high grade, it had been tempered by his purple core essence. In addition, it already possessed spirituality and had the potential to become a spirit treasure. Whether in terms of power or toughness, it was no weaker than a supreme-grade golden core realm treasure. Coupled with Ziyue's one sword shattering all laws, when Bai Ziyue was at the early stages of the golden core realm, he had unleashed the might of a single sword strike that could destroy all technique. That had already exceeded the half-step essence soul realm and touched the early stages of the essence soul realm. Now that Ziyue had broken through to the mid-stage golden core realm, his strength had increased in all aspects. Naturally, the power of this attack had also soared to an unimaginable level. Therefore, when Ziyue's flying sword touched the bone saber trembled. Bang! The bone saber trembled violently and its spiritual light dissipated. Then it was knocked away. The remaining force of the flying sword did not diminish and landed on Patriarch Bitter Lettuce's Black Scorch Saber. Chi. The river-like blood-red light quickly dissipated, and the Black Scorch Saber's body seemed to have suffered a heavy blow, revealing obvious cracks. At this point, the power of Ziyue's attack had not completely dissipated. Although its power had been reduced by 70%, the remaining 30% of its power still landed on Patriarch Bitter Lettuce's body. Huff huff. Fortunately, I still have a set of white bone Taoist robes on me. Patriarch Bitter Lettuce's face was pale, but his face was filled with the joy of having survived a disaster. At this moment, he was wearing a Taoist robe made entirely of white bones. This white bone Taoist robe was a defensive robe made of the bones of a primordial spirit true cultivator. It was combined with many precious materials and relied on the true pattern secret technique unique to the true devil sect. Its defensive power was strong enough to block an all-out attack from a primordial spirit realm expert. Ziyue's flying sword's power was unparalleled, but after being blocked by the previous two attacks, its power had been greatly reduced. Therefore, after colliding with the white bone Taoist robe, it finally exhausted its remaining power and returned empty-handed. Patriarch Bitter Lettuce heaved a sigh of relief. He was about to retreat and wait for an opportunity to counterattack, or if he saw that the situation was unfavorable, when he suddenly felt a tremor in front of him. He suddenly raised his head, only to see a black thread silently chopping towards him. The black thread seemed to contain an incomparably powerful force. It cut through the air like a blade, causing ripples to appear in the sky and faintly forming a crack in space. Die! As the great magnetic slash descended, Ziyue's indifferent voice rang out. The great magnetic slash, Patriarch Bitter Lettuce's face turned pale with fright. However, he had no other means to stop it. He only had time to throw out two palms. But as soon as the palm print rushed out, it was cut by the great magnetic slash and quickly dissipated. Then, it cut through the white bone Taoist robe on his body. Even though the white bone Taoist robe's defense was extremely strong, it was still sliced through when the cutting force swept past. His physical body naturally couldn't withstand this terrifying attack, and was directly cut in half. No, spare me! Patriarch Bitter Lettuce roared. With a furious roar, a nascent divinity identical to his true body, but countless times smaller, rushed out in a panic and attempted to flee into the distance. You won't be able to escape, Zeus said coldly. Then, he cast a great forbidden spirit art. The nascent spirit that was just about to rush out was abruptly frozen in place. Immediately after, Zeus' flying sword rushed out. It was as fast as it could be. Sword chi spat out. Patriarch Bitter Lettuce's nascent spirit was punctured like an inflated balloon. It quickly shriveled and collapsed, then completely dissipated. It was dead. His soul had scattered. Soul energy plus 45236-572. A trace of satisfaction appeared on Zeus' face when he saw the sudden increase in soul energy. Defying the odds and slaying immortals, a golden core cultivator slaying a nascent spirit. He'd finally done it. Chapter 677. That nascent spirit forefather is dead? He was killed by Taoist Dark North? The Dream Immortal King was shocked. The entire process of the battle was simply too fast. A nascent spirit cultivator had died on the spot within a few breaths of time. Moreover, the most important thing was Zeus' celestial method realm. Although she had noticed that Zeus' cultivation base seemed to have improved to the intermediate stage of the gold core stage, she did not expect the increase in his strength to be so great. Defying the odds and slaying an immortal. A golden core slaying a nascent spirit. It was only at this moment that she truly understood why Zeus could say, "There's no need to leave," so nonchalantly. Strength. Confidence. Strength was the only thing that gave him the confidence to speak so boldly. Bitter Lettuce is dead? In the distance, the ascendant cloud forefather, who'd just broken free of the Dream Immortal King's seven-colored spirit-stabilizing light, was dumbfounded. His eyes were filled with disbelief. He knew that Zeus had made a breakthrough in his cultivation realm, and that his strength had improved to a certain extent compared to before. But he'd never thought that his opponent's strength would improve by such a large margin. He hadn't even used the spirit-stabilizing light, but had killed an early-stage nascent spirit cultivator with just a conventional great combat ability? Even though Bitter Lettuce's cultivation realm wasn't considered particularly strong among the nascent spirit realm, his cultivation realm wasn't that great. A third-grade golden core cultivator who'd broken through to the nascent spirit realm was only equivalent to the third tier of early-stage nascent spirit realm. But no matter how weak a nascent spirit cultivator was, he was still a nascent spirit cultivator. He was superior to any golden core cultivator. And yet, he died at Zeus' hands. In his shock, the ascendant cloud forefather finally panicked and felt the dread of death. If even Bitter Lettuce had fallen, what about him? Although he believed that he was stronger than Bitter Lettuce because he'd broken through to the nascent spirit realm with a second-grade golden core, there was a limit to how strong he was. Since Zeus could kill Bitter Lettuce, his strength must be superior to his own. At this moment, seeing that Zeus' gaze had already landed on him, his heart trembled. He hurriedly stretched out his hand and a short sword rushed out. At the same time, the ancestor's eyes fell upon Zeus and emitted a special fluctuation. Kill! That special fluctuation immediately transformed into a black spear that pierced through the void and rushed into Zeus' body. This Taoist Dark North truly is extremely powerful. His battle prowess is unparalleled, and he's able to slay immortals despite the odds. However, he was only at the golden core realm after all. In terms of the strength of his soul, how could he possibly compare to my soul that had undergone the baptism of lightning? Therefore, his soul was his greatest weakness. Even if he had only condensed a first-grade golden core when he broke through to the golden core stage, I might have been able to kill him in one blow. At the very least, we can severely injure him. Rising Cloud Old Ancestor was indeed a primordial spirit realm true cultivator. He was astute and experienced in battle. After the initial panic, he quickly regained his composure and began to think of other countermeasures. As for the soul attack, that was his first attempt. Boom! The black spear pierced into Ziyue's body. Following an unknown trajectory, it rushed into his golden core and attempted to attack the soul within his golden core. Ziyue clearly sensed this attack and immediately reacted. As a thought flashed through his mind, he used his innate ability, absent-minded. Chi. Chi. The moment the human-shaped shadow appeared, it let out a soft cry. A misty green light quickly collided with the spear. The spear stabbed into the green light and quickly dissipated it. It only truly rushed over after exhausting 80% of its strength. Dong! Ziyue's soul shrunk as he felt a piercing pain. He felt a little uncomfortable and his face turned pale. However, his consciousness remained absolutely clear, and it did not affect him much. The difference in the strength of their souls was not as great as the Rising Cloud Old Ancestor had imagined. Although Ziyue's soul had not undergone the baptism of the lightning tribulation, it was not as solid and tough as a true primordial spirit realm true cultivator. However, his foundation was really too deep. His Yuan acupoint was perfected and he cultivated the most suitable top-notch perfect cultivation technique, the Yuan Great Tao technique, the heaven-devouring divine transformation technique, and now the supreme primordial Tao technique. All of these contributed to his extraordinary strength. However, when he broke through to the golden core realm, he condensed an extreme violet golden core. Furthermore, it was a perfect extreme violet golden core with 12 golden core shackles. Such a foundation naturally forged the strength of his soul to an unimaginable level. Furthermore, the supreme primordial Tao technique that Ziyue was currently cultivating would greatly increase the strength of his soul. Every breakthrough in his cultivation realm would greatly increase the strength of his soul. Therefore, in terms of the strength of his soul, the only difference between him and a true primordial spirit realm true cultivator was that the baptism of the lightning tribulation was not solid and tough enough. What? The Rising Cloud Old Ancestor was a little shocked. He did not expect Ziyue's soul to be so strong. Although he was shocked, he was still unwilling to retreat. He quickly attacked again. Instantly, one of his palms became crystal clear like jade. Then, it turned into a blade of light and slashed down fiercely. Chi chi chi, a beam of silver light slashed down like a bolt of lightning. Humph! Ziyue snorted coldly. However, he also attacked at the first moment. With a wave of his hand, the flying sword had already transformed into one sword break all techniques and pierced through the air. At the same time, a black silk thread silently flashed and slashed towards him. Bang! The North Sea flying sword collided with the Rising Cloud Old Ancestor's short sword, creating a loud sound. However, the Rising Cloud Old Ancestor's strength was indeed a little stronger than Old Ancestor Bitterchick. When the two collided, they were actually evenly matched. Then, the great magnetic slash collided with the silver light that was slashing down. After a slight pause, they both dissipated. You do have some tricks up your sleeve. Kill. The Rising Cloud Old Ancestor was shocked. The primordial spirit power in his body boiled, and his eyes shone brightly. Black spears flashed out one after another. At the same time, his hands turned white as jade and slashed out rays of blade light. Although the soul attack did not seem to have much effect on Ziyue, in his opinion, it was excellent as a distraction. At this moment, Ziyue also made his move. Lightning flashed on his body and he quickly approached. The gravity shadow domain was displayed. In a flash, the flying sword turned into thousands of rays of sword light. Then, 9 rays of sword light merged into one and evolved into rays of sword chi. This sword was also one sword break all technique. However, Ziyue had imbued it with the mysteries of the 9 extinction godly sword. Compared to the original one sword break all techniques, there were more variations. Although the power was reduced to a certain extent after being dispersed, and there was no murderous intent, its speed was faster and more nimble. The attack range was also wider. Chapter 678. Boom, boom, boom. The void trembled. The saber radiance and the sword chi clashed, producing a series of loud noises. It was as if they were evenly matched and did not pose the slightest threat to each other. After a slight pause, the two exchanged blows again, using all kinds of technique. Immediately, the heaven and earth yuan qi in the surroundings, which was already shaking, became even more violent. The threads of sword glows and blade glows were able to shatter mountains and rivers as they spread, leaving behind numerous crisscrossing gullies on the ground. Under such circumstances, the Dream Immortal King did not stop. Although her current strength was not as strong as Ziue and the Rising Cloud Ancestor, her golden core shackles were all unblocked. After all, she had the strength of a half-step primordial soul realm cultivator. Every move she made was immensely powerful. Using the star-shattering finger, a star radiance turned into a stream of light and rushed toward the Rising Cloud Ancestor. At the same time, she took out the seven-colored glaze lamp again, which evolved into a spiritual light that swept out. Although the Rising Cloud Ancestor was suppressed by Ziue's gravity shadow domain and the special gravitational environment, his speed was still extremely fast, far surpassing that of an ordinary early-stage primordial soul realm cultivator. Having suffered a loss once, he naturally would not let the Dream Immortal King's attack land on him. With just a flash, he dodged the attack. In the meantime, Ziue was also attacking rapidly. Grand Taboo Spirit Technique, 5 Emperor's Heaven-Sealing Sword, Heaven and Earth Sleeve, Great Divine Powers were cast one after another. However, the Rising Cloud Ancestor was indeed an early-stage primordial soul realm cultivator. He knew that Ziue's current strength was not what it used to be. He had been carefully guarding himself, using his advantage of speed to always be able to dodge Ziue's binding great divine powers by a hair's breadth. This can't go on. Although my current combat strength is extremely fast, and with the help of the Thunder Escape Light, I'm definitely not weaker than an early-stage primordial soul realm cultivator. However, the Rising Cloud Ancestor's speed is obviously faster than mine. Even if I'm far stronger than him in terms of attack, it's just a waste of energy if I can't hit him. Ziue frowned slightly. His speed was definitely not slow. He was practically the fastest among Golden Core cultivators. However, the Rising Cloud Old Ancestor was a primordial soul realm cultivator and had mastered a speed-type Dao technique. When he unleashed his full power, it was extremely shocking. Ziue unleashed a variety of attacks, and even used the Great Essence-fused Divine Light a few times, but his opponent was able to dodge all of them due to his extreme speed. Even if he used the attribute panel to cast the power of time reversal and predicted the other party's flight path in advance, he would not be able to do so. However, the reaction speed of a primordial soul realm cultivator was sufficient for him to retreat in advance at the critical moment. As long as there is a chance, as long as the other party pauses for a breath of time, I will be able to use the Heaven and Earth in the sleeve, the 5 Emperor's Heaven-Sealing Sword, the Great Taboo Spirit Art, and many other sealing and binding techniques to trap him. As Ziue's thoughts flashed, a bright light suddenly flashed in the depths of his eyes. Retreat! Ziue shouted at Dream Immortal King, and used another metamagnet Divine Light. Chi chi chi, like a flash of light, it followed an inexplicable trajectory and turned into a stream of light, rushing forward at extreme speed. As the battle continued, his combat experience increased tremendously. The various techniques he used naturally became more flexible and faster. This metamagnet Divine Light was sudden and fast. It was truly extremely fast. Dream Immortal King's face was slightly pale as she looked at the two parties in awe. She could not interfere at all. She could only stand at the periphery of the area vigilantly and support Ziyue. At this moment, when she heard Ziyue's order to retreat, she knew that she could not do it. Without any hesitation, she quickly retreated into the distance. It's this attack again. The rising cloud old ancestor looked helpless. However, he knew the power of the metamagnet divine light very well. Before Ziyue had broken through to the middle stage of the golden core realm, he was already in a difficult situation. He had to use all his techniques to escape. Now that his opponent's strength had soared, he did not dare to face him directly. His figure quickly flashed and turned into a stream of light, quickly dodging to the side. At the same time as he dodged, streams of divine light flashed in his eyes consecutively. They materialized into two black long spears that charged toward by Ziyue at great speed. This soul attack was extremely effective in disrupting Ziyue. It was also one of the methods he used to guard against Ziyue's attack. Previously, Bai Ziyue had predicted his flight path when he was dodging the great essence-fused divine light, and he had almost been pulled into Bai Ziyue's heaven and earth sleeve. If it weren't for the lightning sky candle that he carried with him, the consequences would have been unimaginable. That experience had left him with lingering fear. Therefore, it was normal for him to use two soul attacks before dodging. Ziyue was naturally familiar with his opponent's fighting style. Seeing that the Dream Immortal King had retreated, his figure flashed and he quickly rushed in another direction. While escaping, Bai Ziyue's aura seemed to have weakened at the same time. While he was moving, there was a sense of panic and not knowing where to go. Trying to escape? After dodging the metamagnet divine light, the rising cloud ancestor's eyes lit up. He knew that after such a long battle, Ziyue must have consumed a lot of energy and would not be able to take it anymore. In great joy, he quickly used his extreme speed and chased after him. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths. The distance between them was rapidly closing. Lightning flashed on Ziyue's body continuously. Like a graceful swan, every step he took covered a distance of tens of miles. Soon, it's just ahead. Ziyue sensed the movement behind him. His face was anxious but his eyes were calm. This time, he wanted to fight for that 1 breath of time. That 1 breath of time could help him to trap and restrain the rising cloud ancestor. In a normal battle, even if he used all his means and used the power of time reversal many times, it would be difficult to pose a threat to the rising cloud ancestor who was always vigilant and trapped him. Therefore, he thought of the spatial crack that he encountered before. Incorporeal and formless, it was always there. Once it came into contact with the spatial crack, even if it dodged in time, it would suddenly form a thunderbolt that was tens of thousands of feet long in the void. That kind of concentrated attack was sudden and the attack range was extremely wide. No matter how agile one's reaction was, it would be difficult to dodge it. He believed that the rising cloud ancestor was the same. He would definitely fall into the trap and would not be able to dodge it immediately. In this way, he could use the advantage of the terrain to cast various restraining great divine abilities and seal him. Then, he could kill him completely. From the beginning to the end, Ziyue's only thought was to kill the rising cloud ancestor. Feigning weakness and running away were all for this. Chapter 679. You can't escape. You will definitely die today. The rising cloud ancestor roared. He sensed that Ziyue's speed had slowed down after a short period of time. He knew that his opponent had run out of strength, so he became even more motivated. During this time, he did have some doubts. After all, Ziyue's battle strength was indeed very strong. He could use all kinds of methods as if he did not care about the consumption. However, he knew that there was a limit to the Jindan energy in any cultivator's body. Even if Ziyue had many supplementary methods, it would be difficult for him to escape from this shackle. In addition, The expression on Ziyue's face and the aura on his body made him clearly feel that he was weakening. Coupled with his absolute confidence in his own strength, he was not afraid at all. I'm here. This is the place. At this moment, Ziyue's eyes lit up. His figure flashed like lightning as he calculated the position and quickly passed through. Ha ha, a spatial crack. So this is the method you deliberately used to get rid of me? Don't you know that my divine eyes are amazing? Even if it's a hidden spatial crack, I can see it clearly. Ascending Cloud Ancestor looked at by Ziyue, who was passing through the edge of the spatial crack, and laughed out loud. Then, he turned and quickly passed through the spatial crack. He, who thought that he had seen through Ziyue's plan, was completely relieved. There was even a trace of a sinister smile on his face. Is that so? Ziyue sneered. He paused for a moment and quickly pointed out a starlight. Chi. The starlight directly touched the spatial crack. Whoosh! A crisscrossing fissure that covered an area of 300 feet suddenly appeared. Although there will be some fluctuations when the spatial crack appears, it is not a threat to me. The rising cloud ancestor sneered and did not care at all. His figure rushed out like lightning as he excitedly looked at Ziyue getting closer and closer. The primordial spirit power in his body was boiling and he was already preparing to attack. However, at this moment, the moment the spatial crack appeared, there seemed to be a special energy that was triggered. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, bolts of lightning shot out from the void. Almost in an instant, it came crashing down and drowned the rising cloud ancestor. Not good. The rising cloud ancestor's complexion changed greatly, and he no longer cared about Ziyue as he hurriedly took action to defend himself. On the other side, Ziyue also took advantage of the moment when the booby trap was about to strike. He knew that with the ascending cloud ancestor's strength, even though this crafty lightning was strong, it would absolutely be difficult for it to obstruct him for long. As such, he did not dare to hesitate at all. One after another, he executed his moves swiftly like flowing water. 5 Emperor's Heaven-Sealing Sword, Heaven and Earth in the Sleeve, Great Taboo Spirit Art, Innate Divine Ability Absent-Mindedness, Rays of Sealing Grand Divine Abilities descended rapidly, filling the sky with spiritual light. Damn it! Rising Cloud Ancestor's heart sank. He knew that he had miscalculated. He thought that his plan had worked, and that he had seen through the spatial rift. However, he did not expect that the spatial rift would be connected to the mysterious array formation in the stellar origin Divine Mountain, forming a large area of strange lightning. The crafty lightning fell. Even though his strength was extraordinary, he was still forced into a very passive situation. Using all sorts of methods, it took him a total of 3 breaths before he managed to escape from it. Then, he saw Bai Ziyue. He saw the calmness on Bai Ziyue's face. He saw the ice-cold killing intent in the depths of Bai Ziyue's eyes. He also saw the abundant and complete core essence rising from Bai Ziyue's body. He had fallen into a trap. The Jindan essence in his opponent's body was unbelievably abundant. In addition to the consumption of his various moves earlier, the rising cloud ancestor realized that his Jindan essence was much more abundant than his primordial spirit power. The weakness that he had displayed earlier was simply a trap. Then, he felt a ball of spirit land on his body. Chi. He immediately sensed that the power of the soul in his body had suddenly dispersed. It had been sealed by a special power. He quickly used his divine thought to activate the primordial spirit power in his body. The foundation of a primordial spirit realm expert's power was the primordial spirit. When the primordial spirit was activated, not only was their control of their own power extremely strong, but it was also extremely pure. Their resistance to great divine skills like the Great Taboo Spirit Technique had also reached an astonishing level. In the blink of an eye, a shocking aura rose from his body again. However, just as his aura began to rise, 3 consecutive soul attacks were launched at him. It was Ziue who had used his divine skill absent-minded. Compared to other great divine skills, Ziue's divine skill was an instinctive move. He could use it almost instantly. This time, in order to kill the rising cloud ancestor, he naturally used all his strength. He used all the soul power in his body in one go, and 3 consecutive attacks landed. Even though the rising cloud ancestor's primordial spirit was strong and tenacious, and was superior to Ziue's, he still felt a piercing pain in his heart and his consciousness became blurry. Then, Ziue's Heaven and Earth in the sleeve, and the 5 Emperors' Heaven-Sealing Sword technique, 2 great divine skills, descended and directly pulled the rising cloud ancestor into the seal. It's done. Ziue was overjoyed. With the help of the space crack and the booby trap, he finally found an opportunity to create an excellent attack condition. While using the attribute panel to replenish the soul power and pure purple elixir energy that he had consumed, he waved his hand and a divine light that was like a waterfall quickly condensed. Dao technique, magnetic divine light. Hum, hum, hum. The void folded and the space became chaotic. A heavy pressure caused the sky and earth to change color the moment the divine light condensed. Swish. Then, he waved his hand. Rumble. The void roared and the space collapsed. Like a flash of flowing light, it directly hit the rising cloud ancestor, who was in the heaven and earth in the sleeve. Its speed was extremely fast. In the heaven and earth in the sleeve, the rising cloud ancestor's face was pale and his mind was in a mess. Quick, quick, quick. I have to get out of here as soon as possible. He knew that Ziue had an attack that was comparable to the strength of a late primordial spirit realm expert. The moment he thought of the strength and terror of that attack, he felt a wave of horror and fear in his heart. Therefore, he desperately used his attack technique and bombarded the space around the heaven and earth in the sleeve. 1 attack, 2 attacks, 3 attacks. The heaven and earth in the sleeve was broken. He relaxed, but the joy on his face did not even have time to bloom. Immediately, he sensed that there was a sealing sword technique outside the heaven and earth in the sleeve. His face suddenly froze and his heart was filled with despair. Then, as if he had sensed something, he suddenly raised his head. No, then, he felt his vision go black. His entire body was immersed in the divine light and he completely lost consciousness. He was dead. The rising cloud ancestor had fallen. Chapter 680. The primordial magnetic divine light blasted down. It was as if it could annihilate everything. Even though rising cloud ancestor's strength was far superior to Bitter Chick's, and he even had a defensive armor on his body, Bitter Chick still couldn't escape. However, when the grand protomagnetic divine light descended, the defensive armor on his body, the incomparably tough Yuan divinity body, the pure and powerful Yuan divinity, everything on his body was completely destroyed and turned into dust. Soul energy plus 492588136. 2 primordial spirit realm cultivators. Even if they are only at the early stage of the primordial spirit realm, the total amount of spiritual energy they have given me is almost 100 million. Ziue looked at the attribute panel, feeling satisfied. Including the 230 million points that he had originally left behind, even if he deducted the time reversal power and the Jindan essence recovery power during the battle, he still had 300 million points left. It could be considered sufficient. Then, his gaze fell on the place where the rising cloud ancestor had fallen. This was because Ziue's metamagnetic divine light was simply too powerful. Therefore, even if the rising cloud ancestor's storage pouch was of an extraordinary grade, it was still unable to withstand the force and was forcefully broken open. As the terrifying energy spread out, many of the treasures in the bag of holding were crushed into pieces. Only a few treasures with astonishing hardness and extraordinary grades were left. Ziue stretched out his hand, and the 3 treasures fell into his hand. A short sword, a token, and a special piece of metal that is completely black and looks like a metal plate. Among them, the short sword was the origin spirit treasure used by the rising cloud ancestor. It was a low-grade origin spirit treasure. Just by floating in the air, it emitted an astonishing aura. It was as if it could pierce through the void and cut through mountains. Good sword. Even if it couldn't be used as smoothly as a natal magic treasure after being refined, its power wasn't weak at all. Under the control of a golden core cultivator, the offensive power it can unleash is definitely not inferior to that of a grand divine ability at the perfected level. A glint flashed across by Xiue's eyes. In his hands, the dagger's power was limited. After all, his own offensive methods rarely originated from magic treasures. Most of them were mystiques, great mystiques, and Tao technique. To him, Dharma treasures were only an external source of strength. Divine abilities and Tao techniques were his foundation. In his eyes, a great mystique at the level of perfection was better than countless magical treasures, and a Tao technique at the level of perfection was more useful to him than all immortal soul treasures. As for spirit treasures of even higher grades and incomparably wondrous, it was difficult for him to make a judgment because he had never come into contact with them. However, in his opinion, the more precious a treasure was, the harder it was to refine it and use it to its full potential. For example, even with his current ability, he would need at least a month of time to refine a low-grade soul core treasure before he could barely control it. Moreover, if he wanted to control it freely, he would need half a year of hard work. If it was a middle-grade primordial spirit treasure, a superior-grade primordial spirit treasure, or even a supreme-grade primordial spirit treasure, even if it was more powerful, it would take more time to refine and use it. After using it, the amount of Jindan energy it would consume would be even more terrifying. Instead, it was better to cultivate a Tao technique. As long as one cultivated it, they would be able to borrow the power of their soul to quickly improve and reach the peak of perfection. In his hands, the might of a Tao technique at the level of perfection would definitely surpass that of a supreme-grade primordial spirit treasure. However, although this primordial spirit treasure dagger was not of much use to him, it would greatly increase the strength of other golden core cultivators. It was definitely not cheap. This medallion is rather similar to the star medallion that I have. It is also similar to the moon medallion that I took from Tao Lord Heaven Origin, and there is a sun on it. Could it be one of the rare sun medallions in the 9-star Tao Palace? It is said that in the 9-star Tao Palace, apart from the sun-moon star medallion held by the Palace Lord, this sun medallion is of the highest grade. Not only does it have a lot of authority, it can also be used to investigate the specific location of the 9-star Tao Palace disciples within a certain range. Xiue muttered to himself as some vague ideas arose in his mind. Then, he put them away. Finally, his gaze fell on the pitch-black metal plate. The material of this metal plate is indeed unusual. Is it the legendary black meteorite gold? Black meteorite gold is an ancient refinement material. If black meteorite gold is added to any artifact, not only will its toughness be greatly increased, it will also have the effect of avoiding magic and lightning. Once I add black meteorite gold to my life treasure, it will be able to resist the heavenly tribulation. My chances of surviving the heavenly tribulation will also increase. Xiue was rather excited. Black meteorite gold was something that only some ancient ruins or the top sects had kept. It had always been extremely precious and was rarely seen in the outside world. He had not expected that the primordial spirit cultivators of the 9-star Tao Palace would have it. It just so happened that he was already somewhat dissatisfied with the grade of his life treasure. This time, he had encountered 2 primordial spirit experts. Even though the Northern Dark Flying Sword's power was not weak, the inferior grade of the artifact had indeed caused him to be somewhat apprehensive when attacking. When dealing with the opponent's attacks, He had intentionally avoided them several times, afraid that the collision would cause his artifact to shatter. After all, compared to an primordial spirit artifact, the grade of his life treasure was still much lower. Suddenly, Ziyue raised his eyes slightly and looked into the distance. A beautiful figure was rapidly rushing in his direction. It was the Dream Immortal King, Li Mengxian. Are you all right? I felt the commotion of the battle just now and thought that you had been tracked. What about the Rising Cloud Ancestor? Seeing Ziyue's figure, the Dream Immortal King's tense nerves immediately relaxed, and she hurriedly asked. Even though her tone was somewhat stiff, there was still a faint trace of concern in her words. He's dead, Ziyue said calmly. He's dead. Li Mengxian was stunned and could not help but widen her eyes. She was very clear about the Rising Cloud Ancestor's strength. He was much stronger than Patriarch Bitterchick. Previously, on the third level of Stellar Origin Sacred Mountain, if Ziyue had not predicted the Rising Cloud Ancestor's tracks in advance and injured him in one blow, the outcome would have been absolutely unpredictable. The fierce battle that had just occurred had also proved this point. Although Ziyue's strength had soared after his breakthrough, in terms of combat strength, he was still slightly weaker than the Rising Cloud Ancestor. However, at this moment, she was shocked to hear that the Rising Cloud Ancestor had died. How could this be? Could it be that Ziyue had some other tricks up his sleeve? Previously, he had asked her to retreat in advance just to deceive others and prevent her from spying on him? He's dead. Ziyue nodded in confirmation and did not explain in detail. After thinking for a while, he continued to say, "Thanks. This time, I actually took action just to repay you for saving my life. If it wasn't for you, I might have been captured and killed by that demonic Dao True Cultivator." Li Mengxian shook her head and said bitterly, "Moreover, I didn't help much this time. With your strength, they are no threat at all." Chapter 681. Saving Your Life? Ziyue raised his eyebrows in surprise, knowing that the other party had misunderstood. Previously, when he fought with Patriarch Bittersonnet, it was not to save her, but it was a coincidence. Most importantly, it was Patriarch Bittersonnet who took the initiative to attack him. It was almost impossible for him to take the initiative to save someone who had shouted at him to kill him. However, he did not say much and only said, "This old Taoist Xing Yun is not weak. I also borrowed the power of the spatial rift here, as well as the formation lightning that was connected to the entire Star Origin Divine Mountain. Only then did I find an opportunity to launch a sure-kill strike against him. Otherwise, even if my strength is not weaker than his, it would be difficult for me to kill him." As he spoke, he flicked his finger and a ray of starlight shot out. Swish! The spatial crack appeared once again, and the strange lightning that filled the surroundings once again seemed to tear apart the heavens, directly striking down from the void. Boom! 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 The scene of raging lightning emitted intense and terrifying elemental energy fluctuations, as if it was the end of the world, causing people to feel a sense of reverence. Li Mengxian's face paled, and a trace of fear flashed in the depths of her eyes. Even though she was dozens of miles away, she could clearly feel the terror of this strange lightning. In her heart, she secretly thought that the power of the Heavenly Tribulation's baptism was probably nothing more than this. Although she had opened all 9 Jindan shackles, she still did not have absolute confidence in surviving the Heavenly Tribulation and becoming an immortal soul. Thank you for the reminder. Otherwise, if I rashly approached, even if I did not die, I would have been severely injured. A trace of gratitude appeared in Li Mengxian's eyes. She then took a deep breath and seriously reminded him. However, fellow Taoist, it is indeed worthy of celebration that you have killed 2 immortal soul stage true cultivators this time. However, the identities of these 2 immortal soul stage true cultivators were different. One of them was the true devil sex elder, Patriarch Bittersonnet. Although this patriarch Bittersonnet was only an immortal soul stage elder, who was ranked at the bottom of the true devil sect, the true devil sect, as a devil sect, had always been arrogant and domineering. With the death of the sect elders, the true devil sect would definitely not let this matter rest, and would eliminate the devil Dao rankers. Based on my understanding of the true devil sect, since the one who died this time was a primordial soul stage ranker, then this time, it is very likely that they are in the middle stage of the primordial soul stage, or even the late stage of the primordial soul stage. Ziwa nodded. The true devil sect was one of the few demonic sects in the firmament territory that could rival super sects like the celestial spirit sect and the nature sect. They also had at least 10 primordial spirit realm experts. Moreover, he was unreasonable, overbearing, and extremely vengeful. Wasn't Patriarch Bitterlettuce attacking him because of the 3 golden core realm devil cultivators he'd killed earlier? However, he was not worried about this. This true devil sect was tyrannical and ruthless, and had a strong desire for revenge. Could it be that Ziwa's desire for revenge was not strong? Passively taking a beating and silently waiting for others to surround and attack him had never been his character. He would naturally settle this score with them. Although he rarely massacred sects and destroyed strongholds, it was not like he had never done it before. No matter how strong the true devil sect was, there would come a day when he would trample through their mountain gate. As for this ascending cloud patriarch, his background is even more complicated. He was the core power of the 9-star Dao Palace, a Sun Order level assassin. In the 9-star Dao Palace, almost everyone could be called an assassin. The highest level was said to be the 9-star Dao Palace's Palace Master and Vice Palace Master, who held the Sun-Moon Star token, followed by the Sun Order, the Moon Order, and finally the lowest level, the Star Order. The assassins who held the Sun Order were known as Dao Palace Commanders, and the weakest of them were at the primordial spirit realm. This ascending cloud patriarch usually sat in the Dingyue city of the true law domain. Since he had come to the firmament territory's star source sacred mountain to attack you, someone in the Dao Palace must have set up a bounty. Furthermore, it was a Sun Order level bounty. Once a Sun Order bounty was accepted, it would not rest until one was dead. After the previous assassin fell or failed, a second one would immediately come. After 3 times, if you were still alive, the 9-star Dao Palace's bounty would be revoked. At that time, the 9-star Dao Palace's Palace Master would even personally appear to invite you and offer generous rewards to rope you in. However, unless one was extremely powerful, very few would be able to escape the second time, let alone the third time. The 9-star Dao Palace had been established for tens of thousands of years, and only a few could achieve this. Among these people, there was only one person who managed to escape the third assassination attempt. This person was the current 9-star Dao Palace's Palace Master. It was said that his strength had already reached an unprecedented level, and some even said that he had already surpassed the primordial spirit realm and stepped into another realm. The Dream Immortal King continued with a solemn expression. Her background was not high, and the Gusha mountain range was at most slightly more prosperous than the cloud-piercing mountain range. However, after she became a king-ranked expert, she had more or less received information that ordinary people could not imagine or even receive. There were all kinds of rumors, and even she felt that it was an eye-opener. Surpassed the primordial spirit realm, and stepped into another realm? After the primordial spirit realm? What realm is after the primordial spirit realm? Ziwa was shocked and could not help but feel a little pressured. However, he could not help but feel a sense of yearning in his heart. Endless yearning. Although he was only at the middle golden core realm, perhaps because his level was not high enough, or perhaps because he had come into contact with very few immortal techniques, the strongest strength he knew was only at the primordial spirit realm. He had no idea what realm was after the primordial spirit realm, what kind of strength one had or what it was like. Now that he heard that someone had reached the realm after the primordial spirit realm, he was immediately curious. He also wanted to truly understand what kind of power and mysteries this realm had. I don't know. Li Mengxian shook her head and said. You don't know? Bai Ziyue glared at him. How could she not know? His curiosity had been aroused and he had come into contact with such a secret. I really don't know. The realm above the primordial spirit realm is something that even the supreme elder of the Sky Mist sect, who is at the early primordial spirit realm, does not know. Without reaching that level, it is impossible to comprehend the mysteries of that level. I have only heard about it from hearsay, but no one dares to say for sure. Perhaps only the sect masters and elders of those super sects would have some understanding. However, in this realm, there are definitely people who have reached this level. For example, super forces like the Heavenly Spirit sect, the Myriad sect, and even the True Devil sect are said to have produced experts above the primordial spirit realm and left behind an extremely deep foundation. That is why they have been able to survive for so long and prosper for hundreds of thousands of years. Chapter 682. It is also because we do not know the specific realm above the primordial spirit realm that we usually call those existences almighty. Almighty immortal Tao. That's right, the reason why the 9-star Tao Palace has developed so quickly and become so powerful. It is said that it is because of this palace master's shocking strength that he is suspected to have reached the level of almighty immortal Tao. Li Mengxian explained. Almighty? Almighty immortal Tao? Ziyue was shocked. There were many names for primordial spirit realm cultivators in the outside world. They could be called by their original Taoist name, true cultivator or ancestor. For example, once Ziyue became a primordial spirit, the outside world could call him Taoist North Deep, ancestor North Deep, or his early Taoist name, Taoist Kunlun. However, the title of Almighty Immortal Tao naturally gave people a sense of deterrence, and was obviously much more pretentious. For the current you and me, the level of Almighty Immortal Tao is still too far away. What is in front of you now is the imminent threat of the True Devil sect and the 9-star Tao Palace. That's right, there is also the Heavenly Spirit sect. The 9 Extinction Sword King also died at your hands. The Heavenly Spirit sect is also one of the super sections. As Li Mengxian spoke, she looked at Ziyue in hindsight, and a deep shock flashed in her eyes. It was only at this moment that she suddenly realized that Bai Ziyue had actually offended 3 superpowers in succession in a short period of time. Moreover, all of them had several tens of nascent soul true cultivators, and they even seemed to possess the strength of an almighty figure in the immortal Tao. I know. However, it doesn't matter. I, North Deep, have always done things with a peace of mind. If anyone wants to harm me, I will not sit still and wait for death. So what if it is the 3 superpowers? If someone really comes, I will definitely break their teeth. Moreover, who said that only they can find trouble with me, and I can't find trouble with them? Bai Ziyue smiled faintly and said in a calm tone. However, at this moment, the calmer Ziyue's tone was, the stronger the impact on Li Mengxian was. If it was anyone else who had offended just one, they would probably panic and be unable to eat or sleep in peace. However, not only did Ziyue not care, he even dared to say that he would take revenge. Aren't you afraid? Your strength may be extremely strong, comparable to that of an early-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator. However, if the next opponent is a mid-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator, or even a late-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator, how are you going to defend yourself? Li Mengxian asked anxiously. It's fine as long as you're strong enough. No matter who it is, as long as I show that I'm stronger than them and kill them, wouldn't that be enough? What's the difference between a mid-stage or late-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator? Ziyue said faintly. It's fine as long as I'm strong enough? Li Mengxian was dumbfounded. Since when did things become so simple? Furthermore, was being strong enough something that could be achieved just by talking about it? As she saw it, although Taoist Dark North was powerful, his combat prowess was at most at the early stage primordial soul realm. But now, he had just broken through from the early stage of the Golden Core realm to the middle stage of the Golden Core realm. At the very least, he would need tens or even hundreds of years of bitter accumulation before he could make another breakthrough and reach the late stage of the Golden Core realm. And within this period of time, it would be enough for the three great immortal techniques to kill him countless times over. Ziyue did not explain anything. How would others know how fast and ferocious his improvement in strength was? Instead, he said in a slightly cold tone, "All right, this matter is over. Let's part ways here. Of course, if you want to avenge your brother, I'll accompany you at any time. Although you made the first move this time, I won't hold it against you on account of the fact that you've helped me after all. If you make a move the next time, don't blame me for not taking into account our past relationship." "Wait," Li Mengxian panicked and hurriedly said, "I've long been aware of what happened to my brother. It has nothing to do with you. He only has himself to blame for everything. Although I knew that he was unreasonable and foppish, I didn't expect him to be so unscrupulous in his actions. He even used my name to hire people to make a move and caused so much trouble. There were many things that others didn't pursue because they were wary of me. As for the reason why I made a move against you, other than because I was indeed a little angry, it was more because I happened to be at a critical moment in my closed-door cultivation. Because my clone collapsed, I didn't break through the 9th Golden Core shackle in one go. Now that I've broken through the Golden Core shackle, the knot in my heart has been untied. Naturally, I won't make a move against you again." "That's for the best." Ziyue paused for a moment. Then, lightning flashed on his body, and he turned into a bolt of lightning, flying into the distance at an extremely fast speed. Li Mengxian opened her mouth and felt a sense of melancholy in her heart. But in the end, she stopped where she was. Her eyes were filled with complex emotions. But soon, a trace of determination flashed across her eyes. Any immortal technique cultivator who cultivated in seclusion all the way to the Golden Core realm would have an incomparably firm heart towards the Tao. In comparison, many emotions would become indifferent. The great Tao was heartless. Then, her gaze landed in the direction of the crack in space. Previously, when the crack in space was triggered, countless bolts of lightning fell. For some reason, it reminded her of the baptism of the heavenly tribulations that she was about to face. Although the two were different, there were still certain similarities. They were also extremely powerful. She wanted to break through to the primordial soul realm. To her, this place that could continuously produce bolts of lightning comparable to the heavenly tribulations was an opportunity. For the current her, it was an opportunity. She believed that as long as she cultivated in seclusion nearby for a period of time, she would definitely reap some benefit. She reckoned that not long after, she would be able to use this opportunity to take another step forward, past the heavenly tribulations, and attain the primordial soul realm. And the primordial soul realm could enter and exit the heavenly tribulations, explore the depths of the water, and even travel 80,000 miles. Even if the physical body was destroyed, the primordial soul realm would not be destroyed. Whoosh whoosh in the void, the wind and clouds changed. The special force that enveloped the entire stellar origin mountain seemed to have lost its power and gradually stopped. Not only did the power of the stars become calm again, but the strange wind, dark lightning, and blood rain that enveloped the entire world also seemed to have become thinner. Their power was greatly reduced, and the threat to the various cultivators was also greatly reduced. The only thing that did not change was perhaps the invisible gravity that existed in the entire stellar origin mountain. And Ziyue was in an extremely good mood. The riot is about to end. At most, it will completely stop after half an hour. However, my gains from this stellar source riot are definitely huge. As he flew, Ziyue was also calculating his gains. Flower of Tao, Stellar Origin Divine Stone, Heavenly Vase, Inferior Grade Primordial Soul Treasure, Tao Technique Great Primordial Soul Divine Light, and the Book of the Great Tao. In particular, with the help of the Book of the Great Tao, he had successfully deduced the complete Supreme Primordial Tao Technique. He had also used the attribute panel to raise the level of his immortal technique to the intermediate Golden Core realm. Just thinking about it made him excited. Chapter 683. In the beginning, Ziyue's plan was simple. He wanted to enter the 4th level of the Star Origin Sacred Mountain and use the Book of the Great Tao to deduce his own Golden Core level cultivation method. Apart from that, he was only concerned about the Magnetite King's inheritance, the Magnetite Divine Light. Now, not only did he obtain the Magnetite Divine Light and a Golden Core level cultivation method, but he also had an unexpected gain. The Flower of the Great Tao can help cultivators break through the limits of their acupoint. The Star Origin Sacred Stone can help a Golden Core cultivator break through the shackles of the Golden Core quickly, saving a lot of time to accumulate and safely transcend the lightning tribulation. The heaven-wielding bottle and nascent soul-level treasures are all priceless treasures. However, my biggest gain this time should be the Book of the Great Tao. As Ziyue flew, he flipped his hand and took out the Book of the Great Tao. The Book of the Great Tao was like a mirror. It didn't look thick, but it contained countless mysteries. As long as there was enough energy, it could deduce all cultivation methods and deduce all cultivation method. With this, perhaps I won't have to worry too much about the nascent soul level cultivation method, or even the immortal Tao level cultivation method. Ziyue's eyes flickered with excitement. Ever since he embarked on the path of creating cultivation methods, he was no longer faced with a lack of immortal Tao level. Instead, he faced various cultivation method materials and his own lack of foundation. Without sufficient foundation, without the help of predecessors, and without the Great Tao, it was difficult for him to create a cultivation method that was unique to him and most suitable for him. Even with the help of the attribute panel, it was still the same. In the early stages, he could rely on the help of large sections. However, as his cultivation base increased, his requirements for cultivation methods also increased. Naturally, it was difficult for him to accumulate large amounts of cultivation methods like when he was in the Aperture, Awakening, or God realm. He believed that once he reached the nascent soul level, the difficulty of creating cultivation methods would be countless times greater than when he was in the Golden Core realm. This was because any book of primordial spirit realm cultivation technique was extremely expensive. Moreover, most of them were top sects that did not pass on their secret. It was extremely difficult to obtain even one, let alone borrow the techniques of predecessors to develop one's own great Tao. It wasn't something that 1 or 2 cultivation methods could accomplish. He must have dozens or even hundreds of books. Now that he had the Book of the Great Tao, it was equivalent to saving him from countless accumulations, the development of techniques by his predecessors, and the verification of the Great Tao. As long as he followed the prescribed order, he would be able to achieve something. He would be able to create cultivation techniques, abhijna, and Tao techniques that were suitable for him. The only thing I need to consider is the energy that drives the Book of the Great Tao. Ziyue pondered for a moment. He knew that it would be impossible for him to do it by himself. He would have to rely on a large formation and a high-grade spirit vein. As for the spiritual vein, there is one in the northern underworld Wonderland. However, it is only at the early stage of level 4. Moreover, it needs to support the cultivation of many disciples in the Wonderland. It will be difficult to build it in a short time. At the very least, it has to be like the star vein in the Star Origin Palace on the Star Origin Divine Mountain, reaching the early stage of the 5th grade. he calculated in his heart. Considering that the beginner grade 5-star vein in the Astral Source Palace, which had been accumulating for 30 years, could only support the full operation of the Book of the Great Tao for one day, he was worried that the beginner grade 5-star vein wouldn't be enough for him to use the Book of the Great Tao freely. It had to be at the intermediate stage of level 5, advanced stage of level 5, or even a level 6 spirit vein. Only then would it be possible. As he thought of this, Ziyue felt a little pressured. However, he wasn't too worried. He was still far from being able to use the Book of the Great Tao to create primordial spirit level cultivation technique. He believed that by then, he would definitely have a solution. Since it's still early and the chaos on the Star Origin Divine Mountain hasn't completely ended, should I go to the 5th level of the Star Origin Divine Mountain to take a look? It is said that the 5th level of the Star Origin Divine Mountain has a supreme treasure, the Clock of Time. This clock of time can control time and maintain an area at 100 or even 1,000 times the speed of normal time. Its effect is even better than my time reversal. As Ziyue flew, he couldn't help but mutter to himself. He knew that activating the clock of time would be as difficult as activating the Book of the Great Tao. It would even require a level 6 spirit vein to be able to support it. If he couldn't experience it, he would feel a little regretful. Therefore, he only hesitated for a moment before he quickly turned around and flew in another direction towards the 5th level of the Star Origin Divine Mountain. Although he was only at the intermediate stage of the Golden Core Realm when he used his power, he was no weaker than any primordial spirit realm cultivator. He was already invincible on the 4th level. Although he knew that the 5th level of the Star Origin Divine Mountain was much stronger than the 4th level in terms of both the gravity and the strength of the star beasts, he still wanted to give it a try. After a few minutes, Ziyue found the entrance to the 5th level of the Star Origin Divine Mountain. Without much hesitation, he directly stepped in. However, half an hour later, Ziyue returned from the 5th level in a sorry state. He was covered in dust and dirt. No wonder there were primordial spirit realm cultivators who died on the 5th level of the Star Origin Divine Mountain. Who would have thought that not only would the gravity on the 5th level reach 500 times stronger, but the environment on the 5th level is also far more violent than the 4th level. There are spatial cracks that are almost everywhere. Even the strength of the star beasts has increased tremendously. Although they are all level 5 star beasts, the combat strength of the star beasts on the 5th level is obviously much stronger. There are many that are comparable to the intermediate stage of the primordial spirit realm. Moreover, there is one that seems to be a level 6 star beast king. Ziyue sighed as he muttered to himself. If it was only a level 5 star beast, even if its combat strength was comparable to the intermediate stage of the primordial spirit realm, with his time reversal, magnetic divine light, and other techniques, he would still be able to put up a fight. However, when he saw a majestic star beast in the distance, which was only dozens of kilometers away from him, unleashing a chain of thunder and lightning at him from afar, he was finally horrified. He had to use all of his power to break free from it. He hurriedly retreated in a sorry state. He knew that the star beast's strength was definitely not as simple as a level 5 star beast. Level 6 star beast? Could there be a 6th level in the Star Origin Divine Mountain? Ziyue pondered deeply and then quickly came to a conclusion. This was because he combined what the Dream Immortal King had said. There was a suspected primordial spirit realm cultivator in this realm. He believed that even such an existence would not let go of a treasure like the Bell of Time. In the end, just like the Book of the Great Tao, no one had taken it away for tens of thousands of years. This meant that there must be some secrets in the Star Origin Divine Mountain that even such an existence would find difficult to take away. It was not impossible for there to be a 6th or even a 7th level in the Star Origin Divine Mountain. Chapter 684. Of course, he had gained something in the 5th level of the Star Source Sacred Mountain. Before encountering the suspected level 6 astral beast, he had attacked consecutively and killed several astral beasts. In addition to his soul energy surging to over 400 million, he'd also stumbled upon a patch of land where Dao flowers grew and plucked several dozen mature ones. Even though the Dao flowers' effect would weaken as the number of Dao flowers increased, the value of dozens of Dao flowers was still astounding. Not long after he returned to the 4th level of the Star Source Sacred Mountain, the oppressive and violent aura in the void was greatly reduced, and then it completely calmed down. It was as if the wind and waves had calmed down, and the air became quiet. The Star Source riot is completely over. Ziyue muttered in his heart, but he was not surprised. He did not stay for long and quickly left. It's been 30 years again. This time, the Star Source Sacred Mountain's riot is finally over. I thought that the Celestial Spirit Sect's Jiuju Sword King would make a name for himself in this Star Source Sacred Mountain riot. In the end, he died just like that? This is the second king-level expert that the Celestial Spirit Sect has lost in the Star Source Sacred Mountain in the past 100 years. The Star Source Sacred Mountain is really worthy of its name of Forbidden Land. This time, it's indeed too surprising for us. The Jiuju Sword King was the chief disciple of the Celestial Spirit Sect's Sovereign Peak. He was a king-level expert, and his strength was in the Golden Core realm. In Argusha mountain range, only the Dream Immortal King could match him. However, he had perished in the chaos of the Stellar Origin Sacred Mountain this time. Moreover, it was said that the one who killed him was an early-stage Golden Core cultivator called the Wuxia Taoist. Early-stage Golden Core cultivator? Impossible, right? Was he killed by a sneak attack? Also, who is the Wuxia Taoist? Anyway, those who participated in this battle saw it with their own eyes. It can't be wrong. Moreover, the Jiuju Sword King was not killed by a sneak attack. He was killed by the Wuxia Taoist when he and the Dream Immortal King joined forces to attack the Wuxia Taoist. Even Dream Immortal King was no match for him and retreated. By the way, the Dream Immortal King seemed to have mentioned Taoist Wuxia's identity. She said that he was Taoist Dark North. Taoist Dark North? Could it be that he was the one who suddenly rose up in the cloud-piercing mountain range like a startled swan, the one who killed Jindan stage cultivators and snatched food from the tiger's mouth in the hands of many Jindan stage cultivators? He had already broken through to the Golden Core realm? Furthermore, his battle prowess is heaven-defying. Not only did he suppress 2 titled emperors, he even killed the 9 Extinction Sword King. In Star Source Immortal City, as the chaos in Star Source Divine Mountain ended, all sorts of news began to spread rapidly. A series of discussions could be heard among the crowd. Among them, the most eye-catching one was the Heavenly Spirit Sect's Emperor-conferred expert, Jiuju Sword King, who had created a huge commotion and united a dozen Gold Core practitioners. However, it was precisely this revered king that was rumored to have died. Moreover, he had died at the hands of Taoist Wuxia, who was actually Taoist Dark North. This news immediately caused a huge commotion. Who was Taoist Wuxia? No one knew. As for Taoist Dark North, although he was somewhat famous in the cloud-piercing mountain range, he was actually very unfamiliar in the Gusha mountain range. However, at this moment, as some of the Golden Core practitioners who had followed the 9 Extinction Sword King returned from the Star Source Hell, all sorts of news about that place spread, and it immediately caused the news about Ziyue to spread rapidly in Star Source Immortal City. Furthermore, as time passed, this news was known by more and more cultivators who were further away. It could be said that he had become famous in the world. Countless cultivators who heard this news were extremely shocked. They also continued to investigate Ziyue's identity, strength, and method. Then, they concluded that he was an Emperor-conferred expert, and even at the early Golden Core stage, He already had the terrifying battle prowess of an emperor-conferred expert. This Taoist Dark North is indeed powerful and should be an emperor-conferred expert. In fact, he is not weaker than the veteran emperor-conferred experts and almost has the strength of a half-step primordial spirit. However, he killed the 9 Extinction Sword King so recklessly, which means that he has stepped into the end of his life. He is not far from death. While the others were discussing, in a certain courtyard in Star Source Immortal City, there were 2 cultivators who were sitting opposite each other. These 2 cultivators, one was old and the other young. The old cultivator was dressed in a meticulous Taoist robe, looking very exquisite. On the other hand, the young cultivator was a little sloppy. His hair was unrestrained, like the fur of a lion. His face was young and tender, only his eyes seemed to have gone through the vicissitudes of life and could see through people's hearts. Around the 2 of them, there seemed to be a layer of inexplicable Taoist ripples, which controlled the surrounding elemental force to be closely arranged, and also prevented other cultivators from eavesdropping on their conversation. The one who spoke was the old cultivator. His tone was calm, but he made an assertion. None of the major sects that practice immortal magic would allow their disciples to die for no reason. Even if the news was found to be the fault of their own disciples, the life and death of their own disciples would naturally be decided by their own sect, and outsiders would not be allowed to interfere. This was not a matter of private matters being unclear, but any immortal cultivation sect that was established in the world had a domineering attitude that made their disciples submit wholeheartedly. The Heavenly Spirit sect had the strength to maintain such a domineering attitude. This Taoist Northming had killed 2 golden core cultivators of the Heavenly Spirit sect, which would naturally infuriate the Heavenly Spirit sect. The enforcement elders would take action, and it was almost inevitable that they would capture him. However, if he knew what was good for him, he might not necessarily die. A king-ranked expert, and one with such limitless potential, is rare even in the Heavenly Spirit sect. They would definitely try to rope him in first, and if they failed, then they would be ruthless. The young cultivator shook his head lightly and said, "That's true. However, although I don't know much about this Taoist Northming, I reckon that he is not the kind of person who would give in easily. In the end, he would probably still be secretly attacked by the Heavenly Spirit sect." The old cultivator was first certain, and then said firmly, "It would be such a pity if such a talented Heaven's favorite were to fall in such a dubious manner." The young cultivator could not help but say, "So, senior brother, what are you planning to do?" The old cultivator's eyes moved, and he had some guesses. "Of course we'll rope him in first. Even if we can't rope such a prodigy into our sect. But there won't be any losses if we form a good relationship with him." As the young cultivator spoke, he stood up and then took a step forward. Buzz. The surrounding elemental force fluctuated slightly, and then he completely disappeared. Seeing this, the old cultivator's figure moved slightly, and he disappeared on the spot with the same method. Chapter 685. In the outside world, Ziyue had killed the Heavenly Spirit sect's 9 Extremes Sword King in a domineering manner. Many factions had also moved in upon hearing the news. However, in the 9-star Dao Palace branch in Star Source Immortal City, perfected Lord Lu Liang stood in the communication hall with a pale face. He could not believe his ears. Just now, there was a sound from the communication hall. In the 9-star Dao Palace's headquarters, the Vice Palace Master had personally questioned him. Then, he received a piece of shocking news. Ascending Cloud Ancestor had fallen. How is this possible? Ascending Cloud Ancestor was an early-stage primordial spirit realm expert. He was not weak even among the primordial spirit realm experts. In the entire Gusha mountain range, he could sweep through everything. How could he have fallen? Perfected Lord Lu Liang muttered to himself. He was very clear that Ascending Cloud Ancestor had not come for any of the treasures in Star Source Divine Mountain. It was for Taoist North Ming, who was only at the early stage Golden Core realm. Naturally, he had heard the raucous rumors about Taoist Dark North from the outside world. However, in his opinion, no matter how cunning and powerful Taoist Dark North was, even if he had the battle prowess of a veteran regal king who was half a step into the primordial soul realm, he would at most be at the Golden Core realm. The gap between the realms and the huge leap in strength made it impossible for him to pose any threat to a true primordial soul realm cultivator. However, the result was the opposite of what he had expected. The rumors said that Star Source Divine Mountain had ended and Taoist North Ming had returned safely. However, Ascending Cloud Ancestor had fallen. Could it be that the ancestor was really killed by Taoist North Ming? He could not help but have such a thought. Even if he did not want to believe it, after eliminating many impossibilities, this result was more convincing. True Devil Sect, True Devil Mountain. The soul-shaking bell rang, shocking everyone. More than 10 primordial spirit realm cultivators were immediately awakened. What's going on? Someone from our True Devil Sect has fallen? Who is it? It's Junior Brother Kuja. Junior Brother Kuja? He has only reached the primordial spirit realm for less than 100 years. His battle strength is weak, so it is normal for him to be killed. However, who did it? Do you know his recent whereabouts? It is said that he was sent by Mother Xuelian to investigate the deaths of several sect disciples. The location seems to be near Cloud-Piercing Mountain Range and Gusha Mountain Range. Cloud-Piercing Mountain Range and Gusha Mountain Range? 2 barren lands? Throughout the entire realm, there should only be one primordial soul cultivator, right? Could it be the doing of the Supreme Elder of the Sky Mist sect? All of this has to do with a Jindan cultivator named Taoist Dark North. Taoist Dark North, a minor Golden Core cultivator? Could it be that there was someone behind him? Investigate this quickly. I need all of the information you have regarding this Taoist Dark North. Also, Kong Mo, you're the fastest and you're the best at tracking. You go. No matter who it is, I will let him know the consequences of offending my True Devil Sect. Yes. Soon, a cultivator with 2 wings on his back, an aquiline nose, a thunderous mouth, and feathers similar to those of birds flew out from one of the palaces. He responded and spread out his wings. Then, he abruptly lifted them up. Whoosh! He quickly disappeared from where he was. With just 2 movements, his figure appeared 100 miles away. His speed was astonishingly fast. Star Origin Divine Mountain. Ziua stood in the distance and looked at the Star Origin Divine Mountain from afar. It towered into the clouds and was incomparably heavy. Just by standing there, Huang Hing gave off an endless sense of deterrence. Especially within it, the special power that could almost affect the surrounding Great Tao rules caused the gravity within a radius of hundreds of miles to be affected. Even the air became much more viscous. This Star Origin Divine Mountain definitely contains a huge secret. The 5th level is very likely not its limit. There must be a 6th or even a 7th level. In addition, the entire Star Origin Divine Mountain is too vast. However, the interior is a space of its own, as if there is an invisible hand controlling everything. There is also the power of the array circulating inside. No wonder people would guess that the entire Star Origin Divine Mountain is actually a Dharma treasure refined by an ancient almighty. Combined with this incident, it's not impossible? Ziua couldn't help but have some guesses. However, if the entire Star Origin Divine Mountain is really a Dharma treasure, then what level would this Dharma treasure be? And to be able to drive this Star Origin Divine Mountain and use it to attack the enemy, how powerful would the cultivator be? Ziua thought in his heart and was shocked. Immediately, the trace of pride that rose from killing the 2 primordial soul realm true cultivators was completely dispelled. However, he quickly changed his mind. Compared to the yearning for the ancient almighty and the immortal Tao, what he valued more was the matter in front of him. This trip to the Star Origin Divine Mountain has ended successfully. The harvest is huge, but the trouble caused is also not small. Heavenly Spirit Sect, True Devil Sect, 9-Star Tao Palace. Thinking of the major forces that he had offended this time, even if he said that he didn't care when facing the Dream Immortal King, he still felt a little pressure in his heart. Extremely important figures of the three major immortal Tao forces have fallen in my hands. No matter what the reason is, they will definitely make a move on me. Among the three major immortal Tao forces, the True Devil Sect is far away in the Sky Devil territory. Even if Primordial Soul Realm True Cultivators were to rush there, it would take at least 10 days to half a month. Although the Heavenly Spirit Sect is also in the Firmament territory, the Purple-Green Mountains where the Heavenly Spirit Sect is located is not only huge, but also very far away. In the short term, I don't need to worry too much. On the other hand, the 9-Star Tao Palace. Ziyue analyzed carefully. The 9-Star Tao Palace is very powerful and has branches all over the major immortal cities in the Firmament territory. They can mobilize a group of cultivators to attack me at any time. Most importantly, because I joined the 9-Star Tao Palace back then, I left a drop of true blood in the 9-Star Tao Palace. There will definitely be cultivators with heaven-defying means who can use it to calculate my position and find me. He couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart and reveal a trace of seriousness. I have to make more preparations. Otherwise, even if my strength can quickly increase, I won't be able to withstand the attacks of a mid-primordial soul realm true cultivator, or even a late primordial soul realm true cultivator. Therefore, the most important thing for me to do next is to accumulate soul energy and quickly increase my immortal Tao realm. The immortal Tao realm of the mid-golden core realm and the battle strength of the early primordial soul realm are not safe for me. Perhaps only by increasing his strength to the late golden core realm or the peak golden core realm in a short period of time would he have the strength to protect himself in this crisis. Of course, if the sect master of the Heavenly Spirit Sect, the sect master of the Heavenly Demon Sect, or even the palace master of the 9-Star Tao Palace attacked him, he estimated that even if he increased his immortal Tao realm to the peak golden core realm in a short period of time, he would not be able to escape unscathed. Chapter 686. Apart from having to raise my cultivation level, I can't let go of my means of fighting my enemies. With my great abilities, I'll naturally be at a disadvantage against golden core cultivators of the same cultivation level. But against primordial soul cultivators, I'll be a little powerless. I'll have to use Tao technique. Ziyue knew where his shortcomings were. It was just that the heaven patching technique and the primary magnetic divine light would be extremely difficult against primordial soul cultivators who were getting stronger and stronger. It was the same even with the 9 extinction godly sword that he hadn't mastered yet. Just like when he faced the rising cloud ancestor previously, even though his offensive techniques were far superior to his opponent was able to dodge his attacks by a hair's breadth due to his advantage in speed. Even if he used the time reversal ability in his attribute panel, it wouldn't be of any help. This was because his opponent's speed was far superior to his. Perhaps I can use the Book of the Great Tao to improve my great abilities one by one. Even if I can't raise the Thunder Escape Light, 5 Emperor Heaven Sealing Sword, and other techniques to the level of Tao technique. If I can raise them to the level of one sword breaking all techniques, it'll be good too. Ziyue muttered to himself. He knew how difficult it was to obtain Tao technique. Tao technique inheritances weren't like spells and abilities, which were usually only possessed by top sects or even super sections. It was extremely difficult to obtain them. At the very least, if Ziyue was alone, he would rarely have the chance to obtain an inheritance of this level. For example, the 9 extinction divine sword, and the first magnetic divine light could only be considered as unexpected surprises, and could not be obtained frequently. That was why he set his sights on the newly obtained book of the Great Tao. Then, after pondering for a moment, he quickly began to act. This time, there was no lack of primordial soul cultivators among the several cultivators I killed. It also allowed me to accumulate a lot of spirit stones. My harvest this time alone has reached 5 million high-grade spirit stones. In addition to the 7 million high-grade spirit stones I originally had, I have a total of 12 million high-grade spirit stones. As for me, using the Book of the Great Tao consumes an enormous amount of energy every breath of time. 12 million high-grade spirit stones won't be able to sustain it for long. Bai Ziyue counted all his gains this time, especially the spirit stones. At this time, he took out all of them and put them aside. All of a sudden, a small mountain of spirit stones appeared in front of him. Book of the Great Tao, go! Ziyue didn't hesitate. He stretched out his hand and tossed it slightly. The Book of the Great Tao quickly floated in the air. As Ziyue's pure purple elixir essence was rapidly depleting, a ball of grayish spiritual light floated along with the Book of the Great Way and landed on a pile of spirit stones. Chi, under the effect of a special force, a large number of spirit stones were consumed. The Book of the Great Law seemed to have regained its spirituality, and it shone with a unique light. Without daring to hesitate, Bai Ziyue sent his divine sense over with a single thought. Boom! In an instant, the sound of the great Tao that he had experienced before, as well as the scene of thousands of great Taos appearing before his eyes, was imprinted in his mind again. Under the effect of this special force, Ziyue's thoughts and soul seemed to have been sublimated, and they became extremely clear. However, when he carefully sensed his own state, he felt like he had 1,000 things to do, and he didn't know where to start. As expected, with the help of spirit stones and other external objects, I can also use the Book of the Great Tao. Although the consumption is a bit high, I can finally use it to a certain extent. Ziyue knew that the Book of the Great Tao had begun to operate, so he quickly turned his gaze to the attribute panel. Enlightenment time, begin. In an instant, Ziyue's thoughts, insights, and strange ideas quickly collided in his mind. Then, they combined with the thousands of great Taos in the Book of the Great Tao. Boom! Involuntarily, the questions that troubled his thoughts and the problems he encountered in his cultivation were all answered in an instant. Furthermore, he quickly understood them thoroughly. This feeling was too intoxicating, and it also made him extremely happy. However, he quickly collected his thoughts and recovered from the joy. He hadn't forgotten the purpose of using the Book of the Great Tao again. To optimize each of the great mystiques, so that they could reach the level of breaking all techniques with a single sword. I wonder if these 12 million superior spirit stones are enough to support me to optimize all of my great mystiques? At this thought, Ziyue quickly settled his thoughts and focused on his various great mystique. With such a huge consumption, even someone as wealthy as him would not be able to support it for long. First, Ziyue planned to optimize the speed Tao technique, the Thunderbolt escape light. The perfected Thunderbolt escape light was indeed extremely fast, and it would at least allow him to dominate the Golden Core realm. However, compared to the primordial spirit realm cultivators, the difference was very obvious. Even Patriarch Bitterlettuce and Ascending Cloud Patriarch did not possess any speed Tao techniques, but they were still slightly faster than him just by using the power of their primordial spirit. He naturally wanted to make up for this shortcoming as soon as possible. The Thunderbolt escape light includes quite a number of acupoints, and it has reached a total of 1,197. It is only 3 acupoints away from achieving a supreme great mystique. It is only 99 acupoints away from achieving a perfect great mystique. However, its speed has not reached its limit. For example, the interpretation of speed in the lightning, the obsession with destruction, and the wanton violence when the lightning is released are all so perfect. Ziyue immediately began to deduce. With the help of the Book of the Great Tao and the Attribute Panel, all kinds of wonderful ideas, all kinds of extremely complex and perfect mysteries of heaven and earth, as well as the great Tao rules of lightning, appeared before his eyes. Then, bit by bit, with the original Thunderbolt escape light as the blueprint, all kinds of wonderful ideas and theories of the great Tao as the basis, rapidly collided and fused, integrating and deducing. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, soon 10 breaths passed. That's right, this is speed. The speed of the lightning is extremely fast. Oh? So that's it. I was still lacking by a bit. So it turns out that this place is indeed much more intricate if it is connected like this. Just a bit more, just a bit more. Ziyue was looking forward to it. His expression was sometimes confused and sometimes happy. Bit by bit, he increased the progress of his deduction. 80 breaths, 90 breaths, 100 breaths. Finally, after 100 breaths, Ziyue's eyes lit up. It's done. I have finally completed the deduction of the Thunderbolt escape light. It has reached a perfect great mystique that is comparable to the one sword to destroy all technique. It includes 1,296 acupoints. Its power has also increased tremendously. It can at least increase my speed by more than 30%. Ziyue was excited. Chapter 687. 30% didn't seem like much. However, Ziyue's speed was already extremely fast to begin with. Now that his speed was increased by 30%, it immediately became extremely shocking. Now that I think about it, even if my current speed isn't as fast as the Rising Cloud ancestor, I'm not any slower than the Bitter Chalice ancestor. Ziyue compared silently and felt a little satisfied. This was because this would allow his speed to reach the level of the primordial spirit realm. Compared to the half-step primordial spirit realm before, this was a qualitative leap. Using the Book of the Great Tao for 100 breaths of time to optimize the Thunderbolt escape technique into a perfect great mystique is still worth it. However, correspondingly, I've also used up 1,000,000 upper-grade spirit stones, which is equivalent to 10,000 upper-grade spirit stones. It can only support the operation of the Book of the Great Tao for a single breath of time. Ziyue's eyes flickered. He felt a little pained. The consumption of spirit stones was indeed significant. However, Ziyue was clearly aware that this was the improvement and perfection of his strength, combat strength, and offensive ability. It was the guarantee that he would be able to survive in the immortal art world and safely pass through the numerous dangers. So no matter how great the consumption was or how great the price he had to pay was, he wouldn't be stingy. Continue. Without much hesitation, Ziyue quickly began to perfect it again. This time, he chose the great mystique, the godly spiritual physique. This was a great mystique that could enhance his overall battle strength in all aspects. It would be of great help to his strength. Without the support of this godly spiritual physique, his strength would immediately be greatly reduced. It would also be impossible for him to defeat immortals and slay primordial spirit. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, after another 100 breaths, the godly spiritual physique was completely perfected and upgraded to the perfect great mystique level. Immediately after, Ziyue didn't stop. He continued to optimize the great magnetic / heaven and earth in the sleeve, great forbidden spirit technique, 5 Emperor Sky Sealing Sword, 5 Emperor Divine Royal Robe, and other great mystiques to the perfect great mystique level. After nearly 900 breaths, Ziyue took the initiative to stop using the Book of the Great Tao. He also woke up from his enlightenment time. In just 900 breaths time, I've spent 9,000,000 superior grade spirit stones to improve the martial arts to the perfect martial arts level. Not only has its power increased greatly, but it has also increased my strength by a large margin. With my current strength, if I were to face the rising cloud ancestor, I might not even need to use the special environment of the spatial crack to trap and kill him. Zue muttered in his heart. He was slightly excited. If Patriarch Bitter Lettuce's strength was considered to be at the third tier of the early primordial spirit realm, then Patriarch Rising Cloud would be at the second tier of the early primordial spirit realm. Those regal experts who had 9 golden core shackles at the golden core realm would be at the first tier of the early primordial spirit realm after ascending to the primordial spirit realm. Zue was now confident that he had the strength to kill the rising cloud great ancestor, which also meant that his combat prowess had been completely elevated to the first tier of the early primordial spirit realm. After all, a battle between cultivators of the same cultivation level might be able to determine the victor, but it was not so easy to truly kill the other party. At the very least, if he could not defeat the other party, it would not be difficult to escape. For example, Zue and the Rising Cloud Ancestor were both at the second tier of the early primordial spirit realm. Even if Zue's combat prowess was slightly weaker, it was almost impossible for the Rising Cloud Ancestor to kill him. In the end, Zue had to rely on external forces to kill the Rising Cloud Ancestor. The increase in my combat prowess is certainly worth celebrating. However, the price is indeed a little too high. 9 million upper-grade spirit stones directly turned into dust. Zue was excited. His gaze fell on the pile of spirit stone powder that was taller than a person and the remaining 3 million upper-grade spirit stones. Deep in his heart, he felt a little pained. It should be known that even an immortal cultivation sect like the Qingshu sect would find it unbearable to spend 9 million upper-grade spirit stones rashly. They would need to scrimp for several years to survive. I might as well not keep the remaining 3 million upper-grade spirit stones. Although my current immortal cultivation realm has reached the middle golden elixir realm, to break through to the late golden elixir realm, I still need to consume 900 million spirit stones. Although I have a lot of spirit stones now, it's only a little more than 400 million, which is far from enough. As for spirit stones, they can also be used as a ladder for my advancement and increase my cultivation speed. Zue looked at the remaining spirit stones and quickly made a decision. Therefore, with a thought, he swept his divine sense slightly. Chi. Among the pile of spirit stones, a total of 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones silently turned into powder. In an instant, a large amount of heaven and earth spiritual chi rose. The terrifying and dense heaven and earth spiritual chi was suddenly released, causing the air to slightly distort. Traces of strange phenomena were also produced. In just a short period of time, plants and trees on the ground were uprooted from the watering of this dense and pure energy. They grew rapidly and continuously broke through the limit of grade, evolving from ordinary grass to spiritual materials. Even though most of them were burned to death because they couldn't bear enough power, the plants that were just as resilient were able to bear the water and become spiritual materials. After they were upgraded, their grades rose all the way from the early first grade to the middle first grade, the late first grade, and even the early second grade. Zue naturally did not care about this. He directly operated his golden elixir realm cultivation method, the supreme primordial Tao skill. Boom! The terrifying and dense spiritual chi of heaven and earth immediately rushed into by Zue's body as if it had received a strong summon. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, Zue's body was like a bottomless pit. In just a few breaths, the heaven and earth spiritual chi contained in the 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones was completely absorbed and swallowed. Moreover, within a radius of 10 miles, the heaven and earth spiritual chi in the air surged directly towards him like moths to a flame. The spirit stones collided, causing turbulence, and even the wind and clouds rolled up, rustling. The clouds and mist seemed to be unable to withstand this suction and quickly dispersed. Immediately, there was no cloud in the surroundings for thousands of miles. Ziyue's first official cultivation of the supreme primordial Tao skill had caused a huge commotion. In just a few breaths, Ziyue had completely absorbed and digested the energy contained in the 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones and transformed it into his purple elixir essence, causing his purple elixir golden elixir to become more stable and larger, and its energy to become more turbulent. In fact, the supreme primordial Tao technique that Bai Ziyue had created was originally derived from his divine realm technique, the heaven-swallowing divine transformation spell. Moreover, because the level of the technique was higher, the mysteries it contained were more exquisite. Naturally, the absorption and transformation of energy was much more ferocious and rapid. It was normal for it to have such an effect. Chapter 688. The energy within 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones was consumed and transformed by him. Bai Ziyue took the opportunity to look at the attribute panel. The middle stage of the supreme primordial art has increased from 10% to 11%. That's equivalent to 100,000 upper spirit stones only increasing the progress by 1%. In other words, 3 million upper spirit stones is only enough for me to increase the progress of this cultivation method to 40%. If I want to break through to the advanced stage of the golden elixir realm, I'll need at least 6 million upper spirit stones or 600 million points of soul energy. Ziyue made a comparison and quickly came to a conclusion. Although he knew that the further he progressed, the greater the consumption of his cultivation method, when he truly realized this, he still felt waves of pressure in his heart. This was only the consumption from the middle stage of the golden elixir realm to the advanced stage of the golden elixir realm. If he wanted to reach the complete stage of the golden elixir realm from the advanced stage of the golden elixir realm, the consumption of energy would be even more terrifying. However, although he felt the pressure, Ziyue's cultivation method did not stop at all. After completely absorbing and transforming the previous energy, his divine sense crushed another pile of 100,000 upper spirit stones into dust. The terrifying spiritual chi of heaven and earth rose again and was quickly absorbed and transformed by him. After one time, another time, Ziyue did not stop and continued to cultivate. As he continued to cultivate, the pile of spirit stones continued to decrease. Boom, boom, boom. When the last pile of spirit stones was completely transformed into the pure purple elixir chi in his body, Ziyue slowly opened his eyes. As expected, my cultivation method has increased to 40% of the middle stage of the supreme primordial art. Although my strength has not increased by much, the pure purple elixir chi in my body is indeed much more vigorous than before. Even the pure purple golden elixir in my body has become slightly larger. Under the nourishment of the golden elixir, my soul has become more solid and powerful. It's very comfortable. Correspondingly, my spirit stones have been completely used up. Fortunately, in addition to the spirit stones, I also obtained a large amount of star beast materials, star cores, heavenly treasures, and other refining materials during my trip to the Star Source Sacred Mountain. If I sell it, I should be able to get a lot of spirit stones. Ziyue let out a sigh. He waved his hand and collected the mystical stone powder around him, before tossing it into the northern underworld chamber. Although the spirit stone powder no longer contained any spiritual energy, it was made of a special material that naturally had the ability to absorb spiritual energy. Over the years, it was possible that it could be transformed into a spirit stone mine. Then, Ziyue did not stay there for long. Lightning flashed on his body, and he quickly streaked across the sky. With a few flashes, his figure appeared 100 miles away. His speed was astonishingly fast. But soon, he paused and looked into the distance. There were two cultivators, one old and one young. Both of them were late-stage golden core realm cultivators. The old man was dressed in a brocade Taoist robe and was meticulously groomed, while the young man was slovenly. At this moment, the two of them charged towards him like lightning. When they were 30 miles away from him, the two of them paused for a moment. The old man cupped his hands towards Zue and said, "Are you the Taoist priest North Underworld who defeated 2 regal realm cultivators and caused one of them to die and the other to flee?" Ziue's achievements in the Xingyuan Divine Mountain were not known by many except for the fact that he had killed 2 primordial soul realm cultivators because it was too secretive. However, the fact that he had killed the Jiu Sword King and forced the Dream Immortal King to flee had already spread. And because of this, he was crowned a regal realm cultivator and was publicly known as the Dark North Underworld King. Ziue frowned in surprise. He looked at the two of them indifferently and asked, "Who are you?" "My name is Su Zhong and this is my senior brother Lu Yudao. We are from Mount Qingxian. You may not have heard of us, but I want to say that 10,000 years ago, Mount Qingxian was an organization that was as famous as the 9-star Dao Palace. Although we are not as powerful as we used to be, we are still one of the top 10 immortal powers in the entire astral realm." The old man pointed at the young man and introduced him, then he opened his mouth to speak. "We're here because we want to establish a good relationship with you. If you are willing, we would like to invite you to join Mount Qingxian. We are not limited to cultivation techniques, treasures, cultivation resources, and even cultivation techniques that can lead to the peak of the primordial soul realm. Moreover, you have killed the Jiu Sword King of the Celestial Spirit Sect and caused a lot of trouble. The Celestial Spirit Sect will definitely be angered and send out powerful cultivators to hunt you down. Although you are not weak, I believe that the Celestial Spirit Sect will definitely send out a primordial soul realm cultivator to hunt you down after knowing your strength. A primordial soul realm cultivator is much more powerful than a golden elixir realm cultivator like me. Even if you are powerful, you will not be a match for them. However, if you choose to join Mount Qingxian, we will protect you. Even if the Celestial Spirit Sect is one of the super sects, they would not dare to act rashly against us." Lu Yudao chimed in from the side. "Is that so?" Ziue responded. He had heard of Mount Qingxian. Mount Qingxian and the 9-Star Palace were both assassin organizations. In their heyday, they could indeed compete with the 9-Star Palace. However, because the two powers were similar in nature, they were naturally at odds with each other. When the two sides met, it was either you die or I live. Therefore, 10,000 years ago, the two sides broke out in a great battle that lasted 1,000 years. The result of that battle was needless to say. Mount Qingxian was no match for the 9-Star Palace. Not only did they lose many powerful cultivators, but they also lost many precious treasures and spirit veins. Decline was inevitable. Moreover, the 9-Star Palace was wary of Mount Qingxian and never gave up on hunting down the disciples of Mount Qingxian. Therefore, Mount Qingxian became very low-key, and there was very little information about it in the outside world. After 10,000 years, apart from cultivators who had come into contact with Mount Qingxian or powerful cultivators of the top sects, very few people in the outside world had even heard of Mount Qingxian. However, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. As a professional assassin organization, Mount Qingxian's stealth and assassination techniques were actually above the 9-Star Palace. Naturally, they had preserved a lot of power. Now that 10,000 years had passed and Mount Qingxian had recuperated, it was obvious that they had recovered some of their vitality. Perhaps they could not compete with the 9-Star Palace, but whether it was the number of powerful cultivators or the characteristics of their assassin organization, they were definitely a target that many sects and factions were wary of. Chapter 689. Naturally, Qingxian Mountain would be able to resist the pressure from Celestial Spirit Sect and protect Ziue. But I'm not interested. Ziyue's face was very calm. Qingxian Mountain was indeed an excellent choice. In the entire astral world of immortal sorcery, it was enough to be ranked in the top 10. Even if it was at the bottom of the top 10, it was still very important. If it was not necessary, the other superpowers would not dare to act rashly. If he joined Qingxian Mountain, it would save him a lot of trouble, and he could even safely get through this crisis. However, he had already suffered a loss once. Didn't 9-Star Dao Palace also repeatedly try to rope him in? And the result? Because of the unusual strength he displayed, it immediately attracted Immortal Qian Yuan's attention, and he schemed to make a move against him. And he believed that although the news of him killing primordial spirit cultivators at Golden Core had not spread, it would not be long before the other superpowers would know. After all, the death of 2 primordial spirit cultivators was a fact. Even if the Dream Immortal King did not say anything and there were no witnesses, as long as some experts who were proficient in backtracking or secret searching techniques arrived at the scene, they would be able to discover something. Such cultivators might be rare in ordinary sects, but the top 10 superpowers would definitely nurture them. When they discovered Ziyue's heaven-defying method, anyone would be able to see that there was something unusual about it. They would know that Ziyue must be hiding secrets or treasures. It was hard to guarantee that someone would not be able to resist making a move against him. Qingxian Mountain and 9-Star Dao Palace were assassin organizations. There was no morality at all. Naturally, they would not lack people like Immortal Qian Yuan. He would naturally agree rashly and put himself in danger. He didn't agree? He refused? Lu Yudao and Su Zhong's expressions changed. In their view, Ziyue's current situation was definitely worrying. Joining Qingxian Mountain was the best choice. After all, the threat of Celestial Spirit Sect was not something that ordinary immortal sorcery forces could resist. If Ziyue wanted to survive, he could only choose to join the superpowers. In the Firmament territory, other than Qingxian Mountain, there were only 5 other superpowers. The 9-Star Dao Palace, the Celestial Spirit Sect, the Myriad Sect, and the Great Dao Chamber of Commerce. Although the Great Path Chamber of Commerce's influence spread throughout the Firmament territory, its headquarters was in the True Law domain, where there were only a few primordial soul realm cultivators. Due to its commercial nature, it generally did not participate in the disputes between the various forces. As for the Myriad Manifestation Sect and the Heavenly Spirit Sect, they were both superpowers. Although there was no lack of competition between them, they naturally wouldn't interfere too much for the sake of Taoist Dark North. Even the 9-Star Dao Palace. As disciples of Azure Mystic Mountain, they naturally knew that Ziyue had killed True Lord Qian Yuan. They knew that even if the 9-Star Dao Palace did not kick him while he was down, they would not easily rope him in. Because of this, they appeared to be in disbelief. If it's just the Celestial Spirit Sect, your Qingxian Mountain might be able to withstand the pressure and not be afraid of offending them. But if I were to say that besides the Heavenly Spirit Sect, I have also provoked the 9-Star Dao Palace and the True Devil Sect, what would you do? Ziyue looked at the two of them with a faint smile and said, 9 stars of the Dao Palace? True Devil Sect? Su Zhong was slightly taken aback. Lu Yudao said confidently, Is it because you killed 9-Star Dao Palace's true monarch Qian Yuan? To my Qingxian Mountain, this is nothing. We and them are like fire and water. When there are too many debts, there is no need to worry. As for the True Devil Sect, although I don't know the reason why you have become enemies with the True Devil Sect far away in the demon domain, if Elder Taiheng of my Azure Mystic Mountain is willing to step in, it should not be difficult to resolve the misunderstanding. It is not as simple as a misunderstanding. This time, in addition to the Jiu-Ju Sword King, the Rising Cloud ancestor of the 9-Star Dao Palace and the Bitter Leaf ancestor of the True Devil Sect have also appeared in the Stellar Origin Divine Mountain. But now they are all dead. I think that if the 3 superpowers were to test the pressure together, your Azure Mystic Mountain would not be able to withstand it, right? Moreover, even if you could withstand it, do you have the right to make the decision? Ziua looked at the two of them with a mocking expression. Their expressions changed again, and their eyes widened as they looked at him with incomparable shock. Rising Cloud Ancestor? Bitter Leaf Ancestor? They had all appeared in the stellar Origin Divine Mountain? And they were dead? Since Ziua said that he had offended the 9-star Tao Palace and the True Devil Sect, didn't that mean that even if these two primordial spirit realm experts did not die at his hands, they definitely had a huge connection with him? Could it be they died at the hands of Dao Senior? Lu Yudao was completely stunned, and spoke with some difficulty. Then, as if he was afraid of angering Ziua, he quickly changed the way he addressed him. He he, Ziua smiled faintly and did not explain anything. Instead, he continued, although I will not join the Azure Mystic Mountain. However, it is not impossible for us to cooperate. Cooperation? Lu Yudao was slightly stunned. That's right, cooperation. This time, I have offended the 3 superpowers, so I naturally will not choose to sit still and wait for death. Therefore, this time, I have decided to take the initiative and strike first to gain the upper hand. As long as I can hurt them and injure them to the point that no one will dare to make a move against me. Moreover, because the Celestial Spirit Sect and the True Devil Sect are thousands of miles away, my first target is the 9-star Tao Palace. I think that your Azure Mystic Mountain would be very happy to see me make a move against the 9-star Tao Palace, right? Ziua smiled faintly as he spoke. This was also a decision he had made at the last minute when he heard that the other party was the second-ranked assassin organization in the immortal Tao world. He was naturally very clear about the situation he was about to encounter. Sitting still and waiting for death had never been his style. Therefore, from the beginning, he had decided to take the initiative and strangle the danger in the cradle. However, he was alone and his information was obscured. Even if he could find the various branches of the 9-star Tao Palace, if he rashly plunged into them, it was very likely that he would fall into a trap or run into a mid-late primordial spirit realm expert. Although he was now strong and was confident that he was not weaker than any early-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator, if he were to face a mid-late primordial spirit realm cultivator, he had no confidence at all. Even if he used all his means, it would be difficult to escape the pursuit of such an expert. However, if Azure Mystic Mountain provided him with information and knew in advance the strength and number of experts in the various branches of the 9-star Tao Palace or the Celestial Spirit Sect and the Heavenly Devil Sect, he would be able to eliminate some of his worries and be able to kill and destroy as he wished. In this way, not only would he be able to achieve his goal of revenge, but he would also be able to obtain a steady stream of spiritual energy and cultivation resources. He would use battle to nurture battle and continuously improve his immortal Tao strength and realm. It was killing 3 birds with 1 stone. Chapter 690. In a dense forest, 3 people appeared without a sound. One of them was dressed in a white Taoist robe. His gaze was indifferent, and although his aura was calm, there was an uncontrollable sharpness about him. It was Ziua. As for the other 2, one of them looked young and frivolous, but deep in his eyes, one could see the vicissitudes of life. He was Lu Yudao, a cultivator of Mount Qingxian. The other person was dressed neatly and meticulously. He looked like an old man and was Su Zhong, a disciple of Mount Qingxian. He was also the junior brother of the young cultivator, Lu Yudao. At this moment, both Lu Yudao and Su Zhong appeared very obedient as they looked respectfully at Ziua. Senior, you may not know. The 9-star Tao Palace has set up many sub-palaces in the various immortal cities. But in reality, those are only the mission distribution points of the 9-star Tao Palace. Apart from those responsible for maintaining operations, there are not many experts. Of course, there are also relatively few treasures. The true core of the 9-star Tao Palace will always be the Tao Palace. Not only are there countless treasures in the Tao Palace, but there are also many legacies left behind. This is the foundation of the 9-star Tao Palace. It is also the place that the 9-star Tao Palace values the most. Lu Yudao explained in a respectful manner. Even though Ziyue's realm of immortal arts was actually not as good as his. He had already reached the late stage of the Golden Elixir realm, and was not far from the peak of the Golden Elixir realm. As for Ziyue, he was at most in the middle stage of the Golden Elixir realm. However, the battle results that Ziyue had displayed in the Xingyuan Divine Mountain were enough to shock the entire immortal arts world. The sect masters of the major immortal sects, and even the master of Mount Qingxian, were impressed. In particular, he had heard that Ziyue had vaguely revealed the death of the Rising Cloud Ancestor and the Bitter Chalice Ancestor, and now, he had confirmed this from the inner circle of Mount Qingxian. Although he was still unsure if the two early primordial spirit stage ancestors had really died by Ziyue's hands, he knew that he had a great deal to do with it. When he thought of how the other party was not only publicly acknowledged as the Dark North Lord, but also had the strength to threaten primordial soul realm experts, he felt even more reverence for the other party. This is the location of a Tao Palace branch of the 9-star Tao Palace that we discovered. Su Zhong also chimed in. He was truly a little excited. The environment here seems a bit ordinary. Ziyue looked around. The terrain of the mountains and rivers seemed flat, and even the spiritual qi of heaven and earth seemed somewhat thin. If not for Lu Yudao and Su Zhong swearing that this was a Tao Palace branch of the 9-star Tao Palace, he would never have believed it, much less found it. It's precisely because it's ordinary that it's so secretive. Any superpower would have such a secret place. This was the reason why they were able to exist for eternity. Take our Mount Qingxian as an example. The original mountain gate of our headquarters was breached, and the current generation of strong cultivators suffered heavy casualties. Even the current master of Mount Qingxian was severely injured and died within 100 years. If not for those secret places being used one after another, how could they have recovered their vitality and come out again? Lu Yudao continued, and this secret Tao Palace branch of the 9-star Tao Palace was only confirmed after many investigations. Its main location is hidden at the end of the forest, at the bottom of the huge lake. At the bottom of the lake, there is a water cave, and in the depths of the water cave, there is an area of 100 feet separated by a water-repelling pearl. In that area there is a teleportation formation. Only by using this teleportation formation can you truly step into the Tao Palace branch. That's right, there is actually a poisonous flood dragon living in that water cave. Although this poisonous flood dragon is only at the intermediate stage of the Golden Elixir realm, the venom that it spits out is so strong that even an advanced stage Golden Elixir realm cultivator would be severely injured and find it unbearable. Senior, you have to be careful on this trip. A poisonous flood dragon is not a big deal. However, are you sure about the number and strength of the strong cultivators in this Tao Palace? As Ziyue spoke, his gaze fell lightly on the other party. If there was even the slightest fluctuation in the other party's spirit, he would not hesitate to abandon this mission and capture the other party. If necessary, he would even use the soul-searching technique to investigate the other party's secret. Senior, please rest assured. Although we of the Green Mystic Mountain cannot say for sure how many secret places the 9-star Tao Palace has set up in the firmament territory. However, after discovering this secret place, we naturally carried out a lot of investigations. What we can confirm is that the person overseeing this place is an elder of the 9-star Tao Palace, Lu Chongqing. Senior, this Lu Chongqing is a true early-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator, and a veteran who has been in the early stage for 700 years. He is not weak, and with the power of the formation in that secret place, even an intermediate stage primordial spirit realm cultivator would find it difficult to do anything to him in a short period of time. Senior, why don't we discuss this at length? Otherwise, I'm afraid. Lu Yudao asked hesitantly. No matter. I'm leaving. Remember, don't forget the things I asked you to help me collect. Ziyue waved his hand and glanced indifferently at the two of them. Then, his body moved and the gravitational shadow domain was unleashed. In an instant, the void fell silent. His figure, however, seemed to have disappeared all of a sudden, disappearing without a trace. What a powerful concealment technique! This technique is even better than the void concealment of our green mystic mountain. Su Zhong was shocked and said with a slightly pale face, "More than that. You must know that I have cultivated the mystic spirit true eyes, the great magic of the divine eye, and cultivated it to the small success realm. However, even if I used this great magic to the extreme, I still could not find any trace of Senior Darknorth. It is obvious that his concealment technique has reached an incomparably high level. Perhaps only a true primordial spirit realm cultivator can see through it." Lu Yudao sighed with emotion, and his heart gradually relaxed. Taoist Dark North. I really did not expect that fellow Taoist Rising Cloud would fall so quickly. Moreover, he died at the hands of a little fellow who is not even in the primordial spirit realm. In a grotto heaven there was a huge palace. At the top of the palace, there was a cultivator who spoke with emotion and a complicated look in the depths of his eyes. As an elder of the 9-star Dao Palace, Lu Chongqing was instinctively suspicious of Ziyue's killing of the Rising Cloud ancestor. It doesn't matter whether that Taoist Dark North went against the odds and killed fellow Taoist Rising Cloud. The next time, he will be dead for sure. I just don't know who the higher-ups will send to deal with him. Lu Chongqing murmured, but a trace of anticipation flashed in his eyes. He had been overseeing this place for more than 100 years and rarely left. He had long wanted to go out and gain experience. Chapter 691. Therefore, he hoped that his superiors would send him out to deal with Taoist North Ming. Apart from being extremely confident in his own strength, he was also very curious about Bai Ziyue's strength. Bai Ziyue was able to defeat 2 regal emperors at the early stage of the Golden Core realm, causing one of the 9 Extinction Sword King and the other one to flee. He also guessed that Ziyue must have some secret, a huge secret. From his point of view, regardless of what cultivation method Bai Ziyue practiced, even if he had condensed an extreme violet golden core when he formed his gold core, it was impossible for him to have such heaven-defying strength at the early or middle stage of the gold core stage. Not to mention that he killed 2 primordial soul realm cultivators. Treasure? Or the legendary spirit treasure? Lu Chongqing murmured with a hint of passion in his eyes. No cultivator could ignore the effect of a spirit treasure. At this moment, one of his subordinates suddenly rushed over and said with a serious face, "Supreme Lord, Junior Brother Zhang just sent a message from the entrance. To be honest, a cultivator has appeared around the Mirror Lake. He seems to be the Taoist North Ming, the legendary Taoist North Ming." The Taoist North Ming? Lu Chongqing's expression changed. He frowned and said, "It's really him? How dare he come here? How did he know the location of our Dao Palace branch? Did he come here by accident or on purpose?" I couldn't believe it at first, so I asked Junior Brother Zhang to continue investigating. But after using the outer array to spy on the images, plus we have a way to identify his aura, we were able to confirm it. Also, his concealment technique is very advanced. If we hadn't set up the illusory cloud ripple array in the Mirror Lake, we wouldn't have been able to detect anything that has a shape, unless it's powerful enough to affect the laws of heaven and earth. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to detect his presence. But because of this, I'm certain that he knows the exact location of our Dao Palace branch and came here on purpose. I just don't know where he got the information from. That cultivator said with certainty. Is he really here for revenge? How audacious. You don't know life from death. Lu Chongqing growled, but there was a hint of excitement in the depths of his eyes. One can wear out iron shoes in fruitless search, only to find it by chance. Originally, he had been planning on requesting permission from his superiors to act against Taoist Dark North. In the end, the other party came knocking on his door. Although he did not know why the other party was so confident that they dared to barge into their Tao Palace branch, such a secret place would have at least one primordial soul realm cultivator guarding it. If a golden core realm cultivator set foot in this place, he would be as good as dead. However, this was a good thing for him. In this way, he would be able to monopolize any treasures or spirit treasures that might be on the other party. Especially the possibility of the existence of a spirit treasure. Just thinking about it made him excited. Go, prepare to defend against the enemy. It just so happens that I want to see how much your strength has improved during this period. Then, Lu Chongqing said in a low voice, "Don't worry." Yes. The cultivator respectfully responded and quickly went to prepare. This must be the giant lake that Lu Yudao spoke of. Is the entrance at the bottom of this giant lake? Ziyue did not know that he had been seen through by someone through a special array formation. He looked at the deep lake in front of him. The lake water rippled gently with the breeze. Although the bottom of the lake was slightly turbid, it was still very clear in his eyes. It was at least a few hundred meters deep. Then, with a thought, the surface of the water rippled slightly, and his body silently sank into the lake. A cave at the bottom of the lake? Ziyue did not release his divine sense. He knew that such an important place would definitely have an extremely sensitive divine sense detection array formation. Once the divine sense fluctuations were released, it would be awakened. In his heart, he did not want to make a big fuss and barge into the Tao Palace branch directly. After all, his opponent was a super force. It was hard to guarantee that there would be some hidden treasures that could pose a threat to him. Therefore, no matter how careful he was, he could not be too careful. Soon, Ziyue found the cave that Lu Yudao had mentioned before. This cave was enormous and deep. Vaguely, there was a strange venom that seeped in. Any creature that entered would be unwittingly infected by this flow of water. Ziyue compressed the gravity shadow domain and increased the repulsive force. Then, he approached the cave. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, the cave was enormous, and the walls seemed to have been reinforced by some special method. They were extremely tough, and there was not a single creature living in the water. As he advanced, Ziyue suddenly saw a bright light in front of him. Soon after, he saw a massive space that seemed to be propped up by some special force. Despite the pressure of the water, it could not penetrate the slightest bit. Inside this hole, there was an obvious array pattern. It was complex and mysterious, and there was even a faint spatial fluctuation coming from it. A teleportation array. That's the small teleportation array that Lu Yudao spoke of. It's the one that can truly enter the 9-star Tao Palace branch. Ziyue's heart thumped, but his gaze quickly fell outside the space. On the other side, a massive flood dragon that was more than 30 meters long and incomparably thick was coiled up. It seemed to have sensed Ziyue's arrival. At this moment, its bell-like eyes were wide open as they stared in Ziyue's direction. In the water, its perception was amplified by more than a few times. In addition, although Ziyue's gravity shadow domain was wondrous, in this environment, the pressure was also enormous. It could not help but emit faint fluctuations. Roar! The flood dragon immediately discovered Ziyue's tracks and was immediately enraged. With a flick of its tail, the flood dragon's body turned into a bolt of lightning as it shot out. Boom! Under the pressure of the terrifying force, a violent wave turned into an undercurrent that swept out, as if it was extremely tyrannical. It was just a slight rush, but it was like a column of water crashing into each other. I've been discovered? As expected, even if my gravity shadow domain has been raised to the perfect level, it still cannot change the laws. In a special environment like the bottom of the water, it's extremely easy for the other party to sense it. Ziyue raised his eyes slightly, but he was not surprised. Great theurgy, even if it was a perfect level great theurgy that he had cultivated to the perfect level, relied on the laws of the world and the great Tao. Relying on the laws, even if it was incomparably compatible, it would be difficult to transcend the laws. It would inevitably be affected by the natural environment of the great Tao. Only Tao techniques, mysterious and unfathomable and peerlessly powerful, could transcend the laws and not be influenced by external factors. For example, Ziyue's gravity shadow domain, if it had reached the level of a Tao technique, he would be able to set its own laws. Perhaps it would be very simple and crude, and perhaps there would be some flaws, but it would be able to block the influence of water and fire, and would not be easily discovered by the flood dragon. Chapter 692. Therefore, even though he had already activated his shadow gravity domain to the maximum and was extremely skilled in concealment, he was still discovered by the flood dragon. But, so what? Ziyue thought to himself, but his eyes were as calm as ever. He stretched out his hand and stretched it out slightly. By Ziyue's sleeve immediately expanded endlessly. It was like a black cloth that spread out rapidly, covering the sky and covering the sun as it swept out. Chi, in the blink of an eye, the endless lake water and the flood dragon were sucked into his sleeve. At this moment, he had unleashed his perfected great mystique, heaven and earth sleeve. Roar! What is this? Let me out! The flood dragon roared and wantonly attacked and destroyed. Its divine consciousness fluctuated violently and its voice was filled with panic. However, no matter how hard it tried, it was unable to cause any damage to the space inside the heaven and earth sleeve. It was as if it was isolated in this small world, and it was extremely difficult for it to move around. Now that my heaven and earth sleeve is at the perfect level, even if a titled emperor martial artist is sealed, he or she would not be able to escape. Not to mention this flood dragon, who is only at the middle stage of the Golden Core realm and whose combat power is comparable to a late-stage Golden Core realm cultivator. Ziyue chuckled. He was not surprised by this outcome at all. He had perfected the heaven and earth sleeve. Putting everything else aside, the stability of the space inside the heaven and earth sleeve had reached an extremely high level. Perhaps it was not as stable as the space outside, but in reality, it was not much different. Not to mention this flood dragon, even a king-ranked expert or a half-step primordial soul realm expert would need at least 10 breaths of time to break through. Then, Ziyue continued to compress the space inside the heaven and earth sleeve and unleashed the great forbidden spirit technique to completely seal the flood dragon's spiritual aura. In the blink of an eye, the flood dragon was captured by him without any resistance. Senior, please spare my life. The flood dragon was terrified and hurriedly sent a telepathic message. He was too strong. It had never imagined that even with its flood dragon body and strength at the middle stage of the Golden Core stage, it would still be unable to retaliate in the hands of the person before it. Spare my life? It's not impossible. As Bai Ziyue spoke, he asked directly, then tell me, what exactly is that space? Where does the teleportation array lead to? The flood dragon's pupils constricted and he didn't dare to speak. As expected, this flood dragon is a guardian beast left behind by the 9-star Tao Palace. Ziyue's eyes flickered with a hint of understanding. Without any hesitation, he reached out his claw and activated his divine sense. A special and cold aura with a hint of eeriness quickly drifted toward the dragon's head. Demonic Path Secret Technique, Soul Search. No, the Jiao Dragon roared madly, and the Jiao Dragon's pearl in its body trembled continuously. However, after being sealed by Ziyue, not only was he unable to use any of his strength, he couldn't even call for help. Not to mention blocking this soul-searching technique. 1 breath, 2 breaths, 3 breaths, however, when it reached the 5th breath, Ziyue's expression flickered and he immediately withdrew his hand. At this moment, there was a mournful sound of a horn. Then, the Jiao Dragon's aura completely dissipated and its soul was extinguished. It had completely perished. Spiritual Energy plus 15463632. I didn't expect that there would be a spiritual seal placed in the depths of the Jiao Dragon's soul. Once it touches those hidden places, the seal will be activated and its soul will be devoured and killed. Ziyue's expression turned slightly ugly. He had originally intended to use the Jiao Dragon to investigate some information about this Dao Palace branch. After all, he felt that relying entirely on Mount Qinxian was somewhat risky. In the end, when his soul-searching technique touched some hidden places, it immediately activated the Jiao Dragon's spiritual seal and killed it. But this time, it's not like I didn't gain anything. Ziyue softly sighed. From the Jiao Dragon's memories, he had managed to glean some information about this Dao Palace branch. He knew that this branch was a place where the 9-star Dao Palace cultivated disciples. Just like how the 9-star Dao Palace had tried to rope him in and gave him the status of a 10-star divine token, every once in a while, a group of 10-star divine token cultivators would set foot in this place and use the resources here to grow and advance. This could be considered a place where the 9-star Dao Palace cultivated geniuses. If Taoist Lord Heaven Primordial had not acted against him back then, he would probably have been sent here to be cultivated. Of course, in addition to the 10-star divine token cultivators, this Dao Palace branch could not lack the genius disciples that the 9-star Dao Palace had searched for themselves. These genius disciples not only had outstanding talent, but also had the guidance of many experts of the 9-star Dao Palace. They had unimaginably rich cultivation resources, and in terms of growth potential, strength, and foundation, they were not the slightest bit inferior to the disciples of the super sections. From the Jiao Dragon's memories, Ziyue also learned that in this branch, there was a super genius that was highly valued. He was at the peak of the God realm, and had once fought with the Jiao Dragon, who was only at the early Golden Core realm. Although he was no match for the Jiao Dragon, he had still managed to make the Jiao Dragon win with great difficulty. In Ziyue's view, this Jiao Dragon almost had the strength to kill an immortal and kill a Golden Core realm expert. After all, the Jiao Dragon's bloodline was special. When it was in the early stage of the Golden Elixir realm, it had the combat power of a middle-stage Golden Elixir realm cultivator. That super genius was able to match it. If it was an ordinary early-stage Golden Elixir realm cultivator, it would not be difficult to win or even kill him. Bai Ziyue paid a little attention to it, but he did not pay much attention to it and strode forward. He knew that because of the previous delay and the Jiao Dragon's movements, the other side of the teleportation array must have learned that he had intruded. They must have been prepared. Therefore, he did not hesitate. Thump, thump, thump. Ziyue directly passed through the space barrier and stepped into the space without any hindrance. He also saw that inside the space, there was a complicated and exquisite teleportation array that faintly emitted spatial fluctuations. It seemed to contain endless mysteries. Then, he fully unleashed his battle strength. He used the heaven patching technique, the God Spirit Dharma body, and with the help of his soul energy, he maintained his aura at the peak at all times to ensure that his battle strength had reached the peak. Only then did he take a deep breath, step forward, and stand on the teleportation array. On the teleportation array, there were already 99 upper-grade spirit stones, enough to provide for more than 10 cultivators for short-distance teleportation. Therefore, he only flicked his finger and shot out a ray of divine light. Buzz! Immediately, a ray of spiritual light rose from the teleportation array. Chapter 693. Buzz. The teleportation formation shook slightly. The center of the teleportation formation twisted and flashed. Ziyue, who was on top of the teleportation formation, disappeared without a trace. In the next moment, Ziyue felt a blur in front of his eyes. The world spun and he appeared on a huge square. Furthermore, he immediately sensed the surging and powerful aura of the Grand Formation rising from the plaza. This teleportation formation was the Guardian Formation of the Dao Palace branch. It was both offensive and defensive, and it had an excellent trapping effect. Outside the teleportation formation, groups of cultivators were holding Dharma treasures and talismans. They were also preparing to attack. Their faces were solemn, and their eyes were filled with strong murderous intent. It was obvious that the Dao Palace branch had been waiting for a long time. If Ziyue could not break the teleportation formation in time and escape, what awaited him would be endless attack. He would be in a difficult situation and his life would be in danger. They're here! Quick attack! Kill! Cries of astonishment, groans, and a cold voice filled with murderous intent could be heard. Then, in the next moment, one attack after another turned into spiritual light that filled the sky. One after another, Dharma treasures emitted sharp and dazzling lights. There were also talismans that evolved the 5 elements killing arts with the power of the great Tao. At this moment, it was as if the sky was collapsing. It was so turbulent and magnificent. As expected, Ziyue's expression was very calm. Long before he was teleported in, he had already expected this. As such, he had already made a lot of preparations. Not only did he unleash all his combat strength, but he also maintained the heaven patching technique, the God's spiritual body, the gravity shadow domain, the 5 Emperor Royal Robe, and many other Taoist techniques. He had also been preparing to use the primordial magnetic divine light. 2 Taoist techniques and 3 great techniques were used at the same time. Even though Ziyue's pure purple elixir essence was countless times more powerful than cultivators of the same level, he still felt great pressure. If it weren't for the fact that he had the attribute panel, which allowed him to replenish his purple extreme elixir essence at any time and maintain his peak condition, he probably wouldn't have been able to hold on for more than 2 or 3 breaths. However, it was also because of this that when Ziyue was teleported over and immediately sensed that the surrounding cultivators were attacking him, he also took action. The Tao art, the primordial magnetic God ray, turned into a brilliant ray that poured down from the 9 heavens like the Milky Way. It swiftly flew in the direction with the highest number of cultivators outside the formation. The void suddenly froze, and then it quickly collapsed and distorted. Wherever the divine light passed, it became dark and chaotic. Huff huff, the divine light directly faced the numerous attack. However, no matter what kind of attack it was all shattered the moment it collided with the divine light. Even the magical treasures couldn't withstand the divine light and were quickly shattered. The primordial magnetic divine light did not diminish in the slightest as it smashed into the formation that had risen and enveloped the surroundings. Boom boom boom. The formation was activated to the extreme by the surrounding cultivators, but it still couldn't withstand the attack of the divine light. After it became extremely dim, it shattered with a loud bang. Then, the divine light, which had been greatly depleted and had less than 10% of its power left, crushed down and blasted a group of cultivators. No, run! Dozens of cultivators immediately scattered in all directions in a panic. In the end, except for a few who were within the range of the divine light, the rest of the cultivators were quickly drowned by the divine light and died. Spiritual energy plus 574-2233 plus 712-3205, plus 761-2623. A large number of values of spiritual energy quickly flashed in front of Ziyue's eyes. Since most of them were in the divine realm, the increase in spiritual energy was not much. However, many little drops made an ocean, and it made his spiritual energy increase by a lot. No, impossible. Lu Chongqing widened his eyes in shock and disbelief. Taoist priest North Ming? Was he really Taoist Dark North? Most importantly of all, had Taoist Dark North truly unleashed this attack with his own power? How was this possible? Wasn't he just in the Golden Core realm? Even if he was already a king, even if he really had a spiritual treasure, it was impossible for him to perform such a terrifying attack, right? The power of this attack. Even an ordinary late-stage primordial soul realm cultivator would find it difficult to perform. Lu Chongqing looked at the effect of this attack, and his face turned pale. One had to know that although this Dao Palace branch was hidden, the power of the protective formation that covered heaven and earth was definitely not weak. It was more advanced than the protective formations of many immortal cultivation sections. Even if 4 or 5 early-stage primordial soul realm cultivators joined forces, it would take them a long time to break it, let alone a golden core realm cultivator. In the end, it was just one attack. Bai Ziyue had only struck out a single blow to shatter the grand array. The remaining force of the attack had killed dozens of Holy Ji Palace disciples. Is he really only in the mid-stage golden core realm? Beside Lu Chongqing, the super genius Zhou Xiao, who had always been valued by Lu Chongqing, could not help but mutter to himself. He was the super genius Zhou Xiao that Ziyue had found out from the Flood Dragon's memory. Zhou Xiao had always been very proud and thought that he was invincible in his realm. Now that he had reached the mid-stage Golden Core realm, he no longer took the Flood Dragon outside seriously. His goal was always Dream Immortal King and Sword King Juju. He thought that he was just a little weak in his realm. When he reached the peak of the Golden Core realm like them, he would definitely not be weaker than them. He would also become a king and his name would spread throughout the firmament territory. In the end, when he heard that Taoist Darknorth's realm was lower than his, but his battle strength was shocking and he could defeat 2 King Juju experts, he found it hard to believe. He thought that there must be something fishy about it and that it was exaggerated by outsiders. In the end, when he truly saw his opponent and sensed the terrifying might of his opponent's attack, he was immediately terrified. He felt extremely shocked. Especially at this moment, he clearly felt Ziyue's immortal cultivation realm. Middle stage Golden Core realm. His realm was the same as his, but his battle strength was thousands of times stronger than his. Whether it is true or not, those disciples alone can't stop him. Inform everyone to quickly fight. In addition, quickly activate the super long-distance Dharma formation to ask for help. Tell them that we have encountered a shocking enemy, Taoist Dark North, and ask the headquarters to send someone to help us through the teleportation formation. Lu Chongqing said. He didn't dare to hesitate at all and quickly rushed forward. Before he could get close, his attack had already landed. Yes. Zhou Xiao knew the severity of the matter. When he felt that Ziyue's battle strength was far beyond their expectations, he understood. This time, they might not be able to stop him. Asking for help was the best choice. Chapter 694. Kill. Ziyue did not hesitate to attack again after destroying the Taoist Palace's mountain guarding formation. Lightning flashed on his body, and he rushed into the group of cultivators at an extremely fast speed. Then, a black light flashed on Ziyue's body. The gravitational shadow domain that originally enveloped him spread out. In an instant, the air within 1,000 feet of him suddenly became thick. Gravity that was 500 times stronger suddenly came crashing down. Rumble! In an instant, dozens of cultivators who were within the range of Ziyue's domain, except for one or two golden core cultivators who could barely withstand it and did not die immediately, the rest of the cultivators, regardless of whether they were at the early stage of the divine realm, the peak of the divine realm, or even the half-step golden core cultivators, had their internal organs crushed in an instant. Their bones and flesh could not withstand the pressure of the gravity and shattered into pieces, turning into a pile of meat paste. They were dead. This was the effect of the gravitational shadow domain that Bai Ziyue had upgraded to the perfect level and cultivated to the perfect level. In addition to the extremely powerful concealment power, the strength of the gravity had also been raised to the extreme. Within 1,000 feet, the gravity could reach 500 times. Outside 1,000 feet, although it would be greatly weakened, it was still not something that ordinary cultivators could withstand. No one below the golden core realm could survive under the pressure of 500 times the gravity. Above the golden core realm, if one was at the early or middle stage of the golden core realm, even if they did not die directly, they would instantly lose their combat power and lie on the ground, unable to move an inch, let alone counterattack. In other words, Ziyue could be invincible in the same realm just by relying on the gravitational shadow domain. As for the remaining two golden core cultivators, with a flash of Ziyue's flying sword, their heads were quickly pierced through. Domain? Gravitational shadow domain? How can it be so strong? Lu Chongqing, who had just arrived, was shocked. The strength of this domain is much stronger than mine. It's almost comparable to that of a middle-stage primordial soul realm cultivator. It did not reverse the laws, so it's obvious that this domain has not reached the level of a Dao technique. But this strength, could it be that this domain has been raised to perfection by Dark North King? How old is he? Which one of the great divine abilities didn't require hundreds or thousands of years of accumulation from entry level to perfection? It was obvious that Dark North King had just broken through to the Golden Core realm. His cultivation time was limited. No matter how talented he was, there should be a limit, right? Not to mention the numerous great divine abilities in his possession. Based on their might, which one of them wasn't at the advanced stage or above? Also, wasn't his strength a little too strong? Could it be that he really did kill old Devil Chalice and fellow Taoist Ascendant Cloud? Lu Chongqing felt a chill in his heart. At this moment, he really wanted to escape regardless of everything. In fact, Bai Ziyue's strength had exceeded his expectations. His previous confidence, complacency, and eagerness to make a move had all been shattered by Ziyue's terrifying attack. But when he thought of the consequences of fleeing and the punishment he would receive from the 9-star Dao Palace, he clenched his teeth. He activated his secret technique and unleashed his full combat prowess. Then, a magic treasure that looked like a pair of scissors turned into a stream of light and rushed out. The distress signal has been sent. Stop him. As long as we can hold him off for a while, reinforcements will arrive. After Lu Chongqing made his move, he didn't dare to stop and attacked again. Whoosh! A dazzling bolt of lightning suddenly filled the sky and blasted towards Ziyue. As expected of a veteran early-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator. His strength is even stronger than that of Ascendant Cloud. He should be at the first-tier early-stage primordial spirit realm like me. Bai Ziyue's expression changed, and he became more solemn. A first-tier early-stage primordial spirit realm cultivator was definitely not weak. Even he had to be careful when dealing with him. Rumble. Thunder roared. It turned into a waterfall and fell. At the same time, the scissors suddenly opened up and a misty power spread out from within. In the middle of the scissors, there was a terrifying force that made one's mind uneasy. Bzzzt Ziyue didn't dare to be careless. Lightning flashed on his body, and he turned into a stream of spiritual light to dodge quickly. However, the power of the thunder and lightning was too fast. Even though his lightning escape light was equally fast, he couldn't help but be affected. At least 70% of the power blasted onto Ziyue's body. The 5 Emperor God Imperial robe on his body swayed. However, by Ziyue's 5 Emperor Divine Royal robe, had also been upgraded to the level of a perfect Great Ubijin. Under the enhancement of the Heaven Patching technique and other techniques, its defensive power had naturally reached the first tier of the early primordial soul realm. It was easy to completely block the thunder and lightning attack, let alone 70% of its power. However, the Scissors' Dharma treasure emitted a misty power and rushed over. Although its speed was slightly slower than the thunder and lightning, it was equally shocking. In response, Ziyue reached out with one hand. The cuff of his sleeve instantly expanded and absorbed the Scissors' Dharma treasure. Ka in the universe in the sleeve, the scissors kept opening and closing. Every time it closed, a special power would be released, causing Ziyue to tremble. Boom! Finally, the scissors broke free from the restraints of the universe in the sleeve and reappeared in the outside world. However, at this point, Ziyue naturally wouldn't stop. As he used his lightning escape light to close in on Lu Chongqing, a magnetic slash silently rushed out. At the same time, his natal flying sword evolved to break all techniques with a single sword and quickly rushed out. Lu Chongqing was secretly shocked. His speed was equally shocking, and he wasn't any slower than Ziyue. He quickly dodged. Ancestor Evergreen is here. He's blocking Taoist Dark North. Quick, let's attack together. The two powerhouses quickly exchanged blows, causing a huge commotion. Immediately, there were cultivators who cried out in surprise. Lu Chongqing's arrival immediately made the defeated disciples overjoyed. It was as if they had found a backbone. Under the command of a few golden core cultivators, they all joined forces and attacked Ziyue. However, because the effect of Ziyue's gravity shadow domain was too terrifying, everyone was stunned. Therefore, even if they attacked, they all hid 100 feet away. Do you think you can escape by hiding? Ziyue sneered, and lightning flashed on his body. His speed instantly exploded to the extreme. Like a flash, the cultivators didn't even have time to attack before they were crushed by the sudden gravity and turned into meat paste. Even if there were some who were crushed by the gravity and were lucky enough to survive, they would be killed one by Ziyue's Dark North flying sword. In the blink of an eye there were casualties. Your opponent is me. Lu Chongqing was shocked and hurriedly attacked again. The scissors were like lightning, opening and closing quickly. Immediately, a dazzling light rushed out and slashed towards Ziyue. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.